the worlds of the heavens starting with Game of Thrones. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126 On the boat. With the help of British soldiers, Xia Changqing was successfully rescued and boarded the ship. This was a 3-masted sailing ship, with the British flag flying high on the bow, and the sailors on the deck were all wearing the uniforms of the British Royal Navy. Among all the rescued victims, Xia Changqing seemed the most relaxed, which made him very conspicuous. But Xia Changqing didn't care. "Did you find out what happened?" a young man who looked like an officer asked the soldier. The other party looked only about 20 years old, but his temperament seemed to be in a high position. "Captain, I didn't find out anything. This person is from the east, and he doesn't seem to speak our language very well." "Oriental? Why is he here?" The captain also felt very strange. He cast his eyes on Xia Changqing. He also felt that this young man was too calm. Xia Changqing smiled and nodded at the other party. Although he pretended that he didn't speak the same language, his smile was common. James Norrington also smiled and greeted Xia Changqing very politely. He didn't expect to encounter such a thing on his way to take office. However, although this Oriental man was very strange, James did not take it too seriously. He was just one person and could not make any big waves on this ship. Send him to rest and let the soldiers search as soon as possible to see if there are any survivors, James ordered. "Yes, Captain." The soldier took the order and gestured to Xia Changqing to follow him. Xia Changqing did not expect that these British people would be so kind and righteous. Although it was not yet time for dinner, they prepared clean water and food for these victims. Even though the food was just some black bread and mashed potatoes, the rescued victims were grateful. There were a total of 12 rescued victims, including Xia Changqing. In addition to Xia Changqing, the most respectable person, there was also a boy about 10 years old. From the conversations of the victims around him, Xia Changqing learned that they were attacked by pirates, resulting in the destruction of the merchant ship. Fortunately, this British warship passed by, otherwise they would have died in the sea. After eating and drinking, Captain Norrington asked the soldiers to arrange a room for Xia Changqing and others to rest. Later, a soldier informed Xia Changqing and others that their destination was Port Royal. On board were Governor Swan, who was about to take office as the governor of Port Royal, and Captain James Norrington, who commanded the Port Royal Navy. Of course, these people were big figures that the victims could hardly contact. James did not intend to repay his kindness, and the victims did not need to thank him specifically. After arriving at Port Royal, the victims could leave on their own, and their fate would end there. No one cared about the victims. For them, being able to survive was already a blessing from the gods. How could they ask for more? After obtaining this information, Xia Changqing already knew where he was now. During this period of time, the Black Pearl had just been cursed, and the famous Captain Jack was betrayed by his men. Now he didn't know which island he was on. After a long struggle, all the victims were divided into 2 groups and squeezed into 2 rooms. No one had any objection to this. After being frightened and suffering from hunger and cold, they could not wait to have a good sleep. But Xia Changqing could not stand it. A strong smell like fermentation filled the room, which made Xia Changqing, who had keen senses, almost vomit. These victims had been sailing on the sea for many days, and after being rescued, James was not so kind to provide them with clean water to take a bath. Xia Changqing, who could not stand it, did not want to stay for even a second. He pushed the door and walked out directly. The other victims were not familiar with Xia Changqing, a young man, and would not ask him about his affairs. Coincidentally, when Xia Changqing pushed the door open and walked out, the door next door also opened, and the only teenager among the victims ran out. After seeing Xia Changqing looking at him, Will Turner was also slightly stunned. Will Turner? Xia Changqing was stunned in his heart, and he had already determined the identity of the teenager in front of him. "Sir, do you know me?" It was indeed him. The future captain of the Flying Dutchman was just a little kid at this moment. Xia Changqing couldn't help but reach out and touch Will's hair. Such an intimate move made Will very uncomfortable, and he took 2 steps back. Sir? Will looked at Xia Changqing warily. Oh, sorry, little Will, I know your father Bill Turner. Xia Changqing spoke without thinking. Of course, he didn't lie. He did know Shoelace Bill from the movie. What, you know my father? Then do you know where he is now? Little Will was immediately excited. He didn't know that his father was a pirate yet, and Bill Turner had been missing for a long time. So after hearing Xia Changqing say that he knew his father, Will was so excited. What Will didn't expect was that Xia Changqing said directly in a puzzled tone, Bill is your father, where is he, don't you know? Will's excited expression froze on his face, and the next moment, he sighed dejectedly, father has been missing for a long time, I don't know where he went. That's a pity. Xia Changqing comforted him. He thought about it carefully. Bill Turner should have been sunk to the sea by Captain Barbus because of his support for Jack Sparrow, and then became a member of the Flying Dutchman. However, these things are not suitable to tell little Will now. Will, you haven't told me why you are here? My mother died, my father disappeared, and I boarded the ship from London. Will didn't explain too much. Now he is alone, and his personality has become a little introverted and inferior. Poor child. Xia Changqing expressed his goodwill. He didn't know whether Will would help him become the Pirate King in the future, but just take it as a leisurely move. Thank you for your comfort, sir. May I know your name? Will looked at Xia Changqing expectantly. In such a place, meeting someone who knew his father, Will unconsciously felt a sense of closeness to Xia Changqing. Of course, I'm an adventurer from the east. You can call me Xia. Okay, Uncle Xia. Chapter 127 Elizabeth. Uncle? Xia Changqing's face stiffened for a moment. He couldn't help but touch his smooth face. Although there was nothing wrong with Will calling him uncle, he said he knew his father. Of course, there was nothing wrong with Will calling him uncle. However, Xia Changqing didn't want to be called old by Will. You can call me brother, or just call me by my name. Xia Changqing looked into Will's eyes and said very seriously, ah. Will opened his mouth in surprise, not understanding why the old man emphasized this. Fortunately, Xia Changqing didn't have the ability to see through people's hearts. If he knew what Will was thinking, he would definitely slap this naughty kid to death. Why didn't you rest in your room and run out? Then, Xia Changqing asked in a very intimate tone. In fact, Will didn't realize that he had no longer been on guard against Xia Changqing in his heart, but was very close to him. I can't sleep. I want to go to the deck to blow the wind. Will's palm-sized face wrinkled together, making him look like a sentimental poet. Me too. Let's go together. A big man and a small man came to the deck from the cabin together. The British naval soldiers along the way did not pay attention to the two people's actions. At most, they paid more attention to Xia Changqing. There was no way. Xia Changqing, who had a long sword on his waist, looked a little bit skilled. Even if the naval soldiers were relieved, they would pay more attention to him. However, Captain Narrington was a broad-minded person. He did not ask Xia Changqing to hand over his long sword. Narrington had the confidence that everything on the ship was under his control. Without being disturbed, Xia Changqing and Will came to the bow, but they did not expect that someone had already got there first. It was a little girl about the same age as Will. She turned her back to the two of them and lay on the railing. Elizabeth. Will shouted excitedly. Like Xia Changqing, this little girl was also his new friend. After hearing the shout suddenly, the little girl turned around quickly, her eyes slightly panicked, and after finding out that it was Will, a smile quickly appeared on her face. Xia Changqing's eyes moved slightly. If he saw it right, Elizabeth looked at Will with a guilty look, and her hands were always behind her back, and she seemed to be holding something in her hands. Aztec gold coins. The gold coins with the Aztec curse on them cursed all the crew members on the Black Pearl, and they would become skeletons without any flesh and blood under the moonlight. It was difficult to fall asleep, and they could not feel the deliciousness of wine and food, and they would live in pain forever. To lift the curse, all the Aztec gold coins must be returned, and the blood of the cursed people must be added. The coin in Elizabeth's hand belonged to Will's father. Before being executed, Shoelace Bill gave this gold coin to little Will. Xia Changqing took a deep look at Elizabeth, who was still a little girl. This little girl, who was originally a noble lady but dreamed of becoming a pirate, would really realize her dream in the future and become the pirate king by mistake. Although her pirate king was a bit of a joke. At this moment, Xia Changqing suddenly remembered his mission. The system only asked him to support one person to become the pirate king, but did not specify who it was. It seems, maybe Elizabeth is a good person, and the little girl also has ambitions in this regard. As long as she goes with the flow, she can easily complete the task. Xia Changqing stared at Elizabeth, thinking about this possibility in his heart. Although Elizabeth's appearance is not satisfactory now, she should be a beauty when she grows up. Otherwise, Elizabeth would not be able to charm James and Will. For some reason, Elizabeth suddenly felt a little uncomfortable, especially the man who came with Will. The look he gave her was too scary. Will, who is he? The little girl couldn't help, but whispered in Will's ear. Will glanced at Xia Changqing, who was still in deep thought, and he also whispered to Elizabeth, "This is Uncle Xia, my father's friend. He is an adventurer from the east, but he doesn't like others to call him uncle." Why? The identity of an oriental adventurer instantly aroused Elizabeth's interest. She asked carefully again, "Adventurer, is he a pirate?" The little girl's question scared Will instantly. The name of pirate is not something that can be mentioned casually. Once those cursed people are discovered, they will be hanged. Adventurers are not pirates. At this moment, Xia Changqing's clear voice suddenly sounded, startling the two children and causing them to separate quickly. In Elizabeth's panicked eyes, it was Xia Changqing's face that seemed to be smiling. "Little girl, it is not a good habit to casually call someone a pirate. Can I understand this as your slander against me?" "Ah, no, that's not what I meant. Sorry sir, I didn't mean that. I'm just curious about adventurers." The startled Elizabeth hurriedly explained, apologizing non-stop. At this time, the little girl had already woken up in her heart and knew that pirates should not be casually mentioned. "Ah, your name is Elizabeth, right?" "Yes, sir." Elizabeth Swan. "Looking at your dress, you should be a noble lady. How could you be interested in adventurers?" Elizabeth, who was questioned, puffed up her cheeks unhappily and retorted, "Can't a noble lady be interested in adventure?" "Of course not, Miss Elizabeth. Do you want to hear my adventure story?" "Can I?" The little girl's eyes widened instantly, with sparkling lights in them. It can be seen that Elizabeth has had an adventurous heart since she was a child. Of course, there is nothing that cannot be said. Xia Changqing leaned lazily on the railing of the boat, looking at the two little guys with curious eyes, and exaggerated what he had experienced. Undead skeletons, monsters that survive by sucking blood, and witches that can transform into dragons. Xia Changqing's stories caused the two children to exclaim again and again. These stories were versions they had never come into contact with before. It was as if a new world was slowly unfolding before the two of them. Will was better off. He was a poor child who had grown up early and was more mature. He just regarded these as stories made up by Xia Changqing. Because these stories were very interesting, Will was so interested. But the young Elizabeth took Xia Changqing's words seriously. The little girl's eyes were full of longing for adventure stories. Chapter 128 Beast. Time passed unknowingly. Will and Elizabeth, who were immersed in Xia Changqing's story, did not notice that it was getting dark. "Okay, that's all for today's story. I'll tell you again if I have a chance." Xia Changqing clapped his hands and made a final summary, which immediately woke the two little guys up from the story. "Ah, is it over? Tell me more, Uncle Xia." Elizabeth shouted dissatisfiedly. However, what she didn't know was that after Xia Changqing heard her words, his face suddenly darkened. What did he mean by uncle? Is he that old? Pa. At this moment, the sound of applause suddenly sounded from the three people, and James came over. "It's a very good story. It's an honor to meet you. I'm Captain James Norrington, the captain of the Dreadnought." Although James' tone was flat, the pride in it could not be hidden. He had enough qualifications to be proud. James was only 22 years old this year, and he had already become a captain in the British Royal Navy. Their destination for this trip was Port Royal, a colonial port that Britain had just acquired. He was going to take up the post of commander of the Royal Navy in the whole royal port, except for Governor Weatherby Swan, His official position is the highest. How could James not be proud of it? Eastern Adventurer Xia, salute to you, Captain. Adventurer, your adventure story is very exciting. James looked at Xia Changqing coldly. In his heart, the name of adventurer is not a compliment. Although many private captains can also be called adventurers, most of those people will play the role of pirates under certain circumstances. Now the young and promising Captain Larrington hates evil and regards pirates as enemies. Naturally, he has no good impression of Xia Changqing. Why, Captain, are you also interested in my adventure story? Xia Changqing noticed the coldness in James' eyes, but he didn't care. No, I'm not interested in your adventure story, but I'm very interested in you. Mr. Xia, my soldiers told me that you don't seem to be very proficient in English. Can you tell me what's going on? Is my soldier deceiving me? James pressed on step by step, which was another flaw revealed by Xia Changqing. Haha, Captain, don't worry about these details. It's just a means of self-protection. Now that I find that there is a wise gentleman like the captain on this ship, there is naturally no need to hide. James seemed to be very pleased with Xia Changqing's compliment. A smile flashed across his lips, but he immediately returned to a serious look. Elizabeth, your father is looking for you. It's time for dinner. Ah. Elizabeth sighed in disappointment, but then she looked at Xia Changqing expectantly. Can I come to listen to the story tomorrow? Of course, beautiful lady. It's Milner. Xia Changqing said shamelessly. Great. Elizabeth cheered excitedly, but she immediately realized that this was not in line with the demeanor of a lady. The little girl coughed dryly, politely gave a skirt-lifting salute to the three people, and trotted away from the scene. The three men present all watched Elizabeth leave the deck with their eyes. What a lovely little girl, isn't it? Xia Changqing said with a smile. After listening to his words, James and Will nodded at the same time. The three of them reached a consensus on this point. Xia Changqing cursed James in his heart for being shameless. He didn't know if James had a crush on Elizabeth now. Even if he didn't, he would treat it as if he did. What a beast. Elizabeth is only 12 years old this year. After Elizabeth left, the three men naturally had nothing to talk about. Even though Will was not considered a man now, there was a stiff atmosphere between them. Mr. Xia, it's almost time for dinner. You can go to the cabin to eat. I'll take my leave first. James took the lead in breaking the deadlock. Before he left, he looked at Xia Changqing deeply. Xia Changqing didn't take James's meaningful look to heart. When a person's power can completely crush others, he can do whatever he wants without breaking the rules. Let's go. Well, let's go see what the British Royal Navy eats for dinner. The food that the rescued victims ate in the morning was not a full meal at all. Now it was night in the blink of an eye. Although Xia Changqing didn't need to eat, as a human being, the habits he had developed over the years still made him choose to eat whenever he could. The British Navy's dinner looked pretty good. Although it couldn't be compared with the officers, it also made the victims very satisfied. After Xia Changqing and Will came to the cabin from the deck, some victims had already come to the restaurant to eat. According to James' order, a table was specially arranged for these victims, and the food standard was the same as that of the soldiers. 4 people shared a cabbage, each person had a carrot, and a large bowl of vegetable soup was placed in front of each person according to this standard. Of course, dinner was definitely not just vegetable soup. Everyone could also get a piece of salted beef jerky, and the staple food was hard biscuits. A sea voyage takes at least 10 days and half a month, and at most several months, or even years. Some air-dried and easy-to-preserve foods became the regular food on the ship. While eating, Xia Changqing also heard the soldiers around him discussing that they would be given a gallon of beer tomorrow. The vegetable soup had no salty taste at all, but after drinking it, it quickly warmed up the body. However, the salted beef jerky and hard biscuits were difficult for Xia Changqing to swallow. Except for him, everyone around him was wolfing down the food. For ordinary sailors, these foods were already rare delicacies. Why don't you eat? Are these foods not to your taste? Just as Xia Changqing was hesitating, a deep voice sounded in his ears. Xia Changqing looked in the direction of the voice, and saw that the person who spoke was the one sitting opposite him. Noticing Xia Changqing's gaze, the British man opposite took the initiative to introduce Roy, from London. Xia, an adventurer from the East. The same introduction. The man named Wyatt Roy was about 30 years old, his face flushed by the sea breeze, and the most eye-catching thing was the bulging muscles on his arms. Are you also a victim of this pirate attack? Why haven't I seen you before? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129, The Idea of Forming a Force. The man named Wyatt Royce said, I'm the boatswain of the Princess. Why haven't I seen you on the Princess? When Wyatt asked this question, he didn't know if it was because of an illusion. The air around him became a little colder. However, as Xia Changqing smiled, the tense atmosphere flashed away. Maybe you forgot. There are so many people on the Princess. You can't remember them all. And I have been staying in the room since I got on the ship. It's normal that you haven't seen me. Wyatt nodded thoughtfully. What Xia Changqing said was possible. The Princess was a merchant ship. In addition to carrying a lot of cargo, their captain also transported some people who wanted to go to the new world to find opportunities. Little will belong to this kind of people. Those hateful pirates. They destroyed the Princess and killed the captain. After confirming that Xia Changqing was indeed in the same boat with them, Wyatt couldn't help but complain in a low voice, his tone full of hatred for pirates. Yes, those pirates really deserve to die. Xia Changqing responded very half-heartedly. After hearing the conversation between the two, the castaways around also joined the discussion. Captain Wyatt, I heard that this warship is heading to Port Royal. Our ship is now destroyed, and we are penniless. What should we do then? That's right, Captain, give us some ideas. It can be seen that Captain Wyatt has great prestige among the castaways. Everyone looked at him eagerly, wanting him to make a decision. Don't worry, we are sailors. Port Royal is a very important port, and there are places where manpower is needed. Wyatt dispelled the worries of all the castaways with just one sentence. In fact, many of these sailors were originally penniless people. Now that they have arrived at Port Royal, they are just starting over. After listening to the discussion of the sailors, Xia Changqing's heart moved slightly. In the previous world, he was used to being alone, and at most made one or two friends. But this time is different. He must start to build his own power. If you want to be a pirate king, you can't do without subordinates. So, are these sailors who are in distress lucky enough to become his first batch of subordinates? After a simple dinner, it is far from time to rest. On the deck, the Navy soldiers are cleaning the deck, and the cables need to be reinforced. There are many jobs for them to do. The sailors belonging to the Princess are embarrassed to eat and drink for free on the Dauntless, so they took the initiative to help on the deck. The only ones who are free are Xia Changqing and Will. Will is still a child, and Xia Changqing is too lazy to work and doesn't even want to pretend. Anyway, it's not James who actively asks the sailors to work, so Xia Changqing will naturally not make himself uncomfortable. Standing at the bow and blowing the sea breeze, isn't it more comfortable? After dinner, Elizabeth also ran out of the captain's room and pestered Xia Changqing to continue telling stories. However, after an afternoon, Xia Changqing had told enough stories. It was really meaningless to tell stories in this rare quiet moment at night. Various thoughts flashed through his mind. Xia Changqing looked at the observation deck on the mast and suddenly had an idea. He smiled at Elizabeth and said in a coaxing way, stories are boring. Do you want to experience the feeling of adventure yourself? What? Elizabeth looked at Xia Changqing in confusion, not understanding what he meant. Do you see the observation deck? On such a beautiful night, don't you want to go up and sit for a while? Xia Changqing pointed to the observation deck, which was 20 to 30 meters above the deck. Elizabeth opened her mouth in disbelief. Those who could climb the observation deck were elite sailors who had undergone special training. At such a high altitude, the little girl still had a little fear in her heart. This is too dangerous. Let's tell stories. Yes, that's right. It's too dangerous to go up there. Will echoed Elizabeth. As soon as she finished speaking, Xia Changqing shook his head in disappointment and said with some regret, since you are afraid, I will go up by myself. I will tell you the story later. Now I'm going to go for a ride. Can you do it? Elizabeth looked at Xia Changqing doubtfully, not believing that he could do it. You know, the path to the observation deck is only the rope wrapped around the mast. There is no protective measure in the process of climbing up. If you are not strong enough, you will let go halfway and fall on the deck, which may kill you directly. Just watch it down there, Xia Changqing said as he came to the side of the mainmast. The news that he was going to climb up the observation deck also spread among the soldiers on the deck. I bet 5 shillings that he can only climb 5 meters. I bet he can reach 10 meters. I bet he. The deck, which was unusually calm, boiled up directly because of Xia Changqing's sudden idea. Xia Changqing, who noticed this scene, felt a little regretful in his heart. Why did he feel like a clown for these people to watch? But then Xia Changqing also noticed that Wyatt and others were also in the crowd, and the former boatswain had a worried expression on his face. With a thought in his mind, Xia Changqing considered whether showing some strength appropriately could play a certain role in subduing these people. Thinking of this, Xia Changqing no longer hesitated. He had originally wanted to take a look at the observation deck. Perhaps it was because he had spent too much time flying in the sky as a dragon. Xia Changqing was somewhat accustomed to looking down at the world from a high position. Holding the cable in his hand, Xia Changqing pulled it hard. The cable was tied quite firmly. He exerted force with his feet, jumped up directly, and climbed up. To be honest, as long as you have enough strength and are not afraid of heights, it is not difficult to climb up to the observation deck. Amid the exclamations of the crowd, Xia Changqing exerted force, as if he was strolling in the garden, and climbed very quickly. Before the soldiers on the deck could react, he had already climbed up to the observation deck. Hey, buddy, hello. Xia Changqing stood on the observation deck and greeted the sailor in charge of observation with a smile. Sir, you too. Don't worry about me, mate. I'll just walk around here. Without waiting for the sailor to reply, Xia Changqing looked out at the distant sea. Xia Changqing, who had already run to the observation deck, didn't know that because of him, the deck below was in an uproar. Chapter 130 Sword Duel. The commotion caused by Xia Changqing soon subsided with the passage of time. After a night, everyone forgot what happened last night. After all, the sailors had a lot of things to do, and they couldn't always focus on one person. But Xia Changqing's behavior also attracted James' attention. The captain suddenly found that the more he knew about this young man from the east, the more he could surprise him. Xia, it seems that you are very good at swordsmanship. How about your swordsmanship? Do you want to compete? James found Xia Changqing on the second day and asked to compete with him. Xia Changqing looked at James with a reserved and eager face and knew that Captain Norrington was just a young man. But Xia Changqing didn't intend to refuse. For him, it could be regarded as an opportunity. For a young and promising person like James, he had seen people who wanted to curry favor with him, so James would not pay too much attention to a defeated general. After Xia Changqing arrived at Port Royal, if he wanted to have a place in Port Royal, he had to deal with the highest commander who held the military power. In order to make a deep impression on James and to put the two on an equal footing, Xia Changqing readily agreed to his request. Okay, I just want to see the captain's swordsmanship. James was secretly happy. He immediately took out his sword and wanted to compete with Xia Changqing. The two stood on each side of the deck, and the battle was about to break out. The sailors who noticed that there was something exciting to watch immediately gathered around, but this time it was about their current highest commander, and no one dared to open the plate under such circumstances. On the other side, Xia Changqing also drew out his long sword. Unlike the sword in James's hand, Xia Changqing's sword was a double-edged half-hand sword. In Xia Changqing's opinion, James's sword was more appropriately called a straight knife. It was a rapier with only one edge, which was more suitable for chopping and stabbing. Because it was a competition, James bowed slightly to Xia Changqing and saluted. Xia Changqing also quickly followed suit, to avoid appearing too arrogant. Elizabeth excitedly acted as the referee who shouted start. The little girl was already very enthusiastic about this kind of thing. Start. As Elizabeth's voice fell, James put his left hand behind his back, stepped forward with his right foot, and stabbed Xia Changqing in a very standard way, with the tip of the sword pointing directly at Xia Changqing's chest and abdomen. But in Xia Changqing's opinion, James's sword drawing speed was a little too slow. He even had the leisure to think about whether he should give James a face and let him lose decently. While Xia Changqing was thinking, his external experience was that his eyes were dull and he looked like he was wandering in the sky. James, who observed this scene, was slightly annoyed in his heart. He regarded Xia Changqing's behavior as a contempt for him. James, who was mixed with resentment in his heart, even increased the speed of his sword drawing by 1 point. Just when James's rapier was about to pierce Xia Changqing's chest, the captain was considering whether to hold back a little to avoid Xia Changqing's injury. Xia Changqing held the long sword in his right hand, pointing diagonally at the ground, and swung it up, drawing an arc, and appeared above James' rapier. Then Winter slashed down diagonally, and with a crisp sound, it slashed diagonally on James' rapier. James's forward stabbing action was suddenly interrupted by this. As a huge force came from his hand, the rapier also tilted towards the ground uncontrollably. At the same time, Xia Changqing had taken this opportunity to rush forward sideways, and before James could even retract his sword, he put Winter on his neck. "Captain, thank you." When Xia Changqing sheathed the sword, James's expression was still in a trance. He couldn't believe that he was defeated so quickly, without even a round. If this was a real fight, the opponent's sword would have cut his throat long ago. This made James, who prided himself on his swordsmanship, feel like his faith was collapsing. What a fast sword. James smiled dejectedly. "I'm so abrupt with my swordsmanship. I want to compare with you. It's really a disgrace to myself." "Mr. Xia, can you tell me your current age?" James looked at Xia Changqing with a little reluctance. If the other party was older than him, then it was not unacceptable for him to lose. Facing James' question, Xia Changqing answered quickly without thinking. 18 years old. "Yes, that's right. I'm only 18 years old this year." Xia Changqing's face was full of the expression that I was telling the truth. "Only ghosts would believe that you are only 18 years old this year." James' eyes twitched. Why didn't he realize earlier that this oriental man in front of him, in addition to his superb skills, was also extremely thick-skinned? "Haha, then you are really great." Although this was not what James said, Xia Changqing thought he meant it. He felt offended. While Xia Changqing felt offended, the sailors who watched the competition also felt offended. If one of them was not James, they would really think that the two were playing a fake match. The battle ended before it even started. Amid the discussions of the sailors, Elizabeth pestered Xia Changqing again. After seeing Xia Changqing easily defeat James, Elizabeth did not care about James's thoughts at all, and directly pestered Xia Changqing to teach him swordsmanship. Xia Changqing seemed to have thought of something interesting. He saw the shadow of Arya Stark, who was like a wild boy, in Elizabeth. "Okay, I have a kind of swordsmanship that is very suitable for girls like you to learn." Xia Changqing had just finished speaking when a dissatisfied voice suddenly came from the side. "Elizabeth, is this what a lady should do?" Governor Weatherby Swan shouted at Elizabeth angrily. "It's just a pity that, although Miss Elizabeth is still young, she already has a wild side, and Governor Swan's words can't scare her." "Dad, I don't want to be a lady." "Shut up, Elizabeth, and come back to the captain's room with me. It's too windy outside." The future Governor Swan smiled at James awkwardly. He thought that what his daughter said was too disobedient. Chapter 131, Evil Heart and Evil Hand. In Xia Changqing's opinion, although Weatherby Swan is a bit timid and does not care about his life when faced with big things, he is a good father to Elizabeth. I don't know how a person with Governor Swan's personality can give birth to a daughter like Elizabeth who is full of adventurous spirit. I'm really curious about what kind of person Elizabeth's mother is. Xia Changqing looked at Elizabeth, who was dragged back to the captain's room by Governor Swan. She still turned back and made faces at him and couldn't help shaking his head and laughing. "If possible, I hope Mr. Xia can teach Elizabeth some swordsmanship." Huh. Xia Changqing looked at James in confusion. He didn't expect him to take the initiative to bring up this matter. James took the initiative to explain. "I can see that Elizabeth really wants you to teach her swordsmanship, not just saying it for fun. I don't want her to be disappointed." "Hey, what's the matter with that doting smile on your face?" Xia Changqing glared at James. This guy's thoughts about Elizabeth are really Simazeo's heart, and passers-by know it. Uncle, brother, can I also learn swordsmanship from Elizabeth? Will's sudden words temporarily diverted Xia Changqing's attention. He looked down at Will, whose eyes were full of desire, and nodded indifferently. After all, teaching one person is teaching. Teaching two people is also teaching. There is no difference. As for how much Will can learn from him, it depends on his own luck. After James left, Xia Changqing did not expect that Wyatt and others would actively surround him. Xia, you really can't judge a person by his appearance. You actually have such a beautiful swordsmanship. You did a great job. Captain Norrington is not your opponent. The sailors' compliments were mixed with undisguised pride, as if they were the ones who defeated James just now. From what Wyatt and the sailors said later, Xia Changqing knew why they were so eager. Compared with the British Navy on the Dreadnought, they and Xia Changqing were in the same group. After all, they were all rescued from the princess, and with a small number of people, it was natural for them to keep each other warm. Even Wyatt, the former boatswain of the princess, was willing to follow Xia Changqing as the strongest in swordsmanship. It turned out that Xia Changqing's attitude towards them was too cold. Wyatt and others were not fools, so they could naturally feel Xia Changqing's ambiguous attitude. Now Xia Changqing has changed his mind. He wants to try to build his own power. When facing Wyatt and others, his attitude is naturally different. Although Wyatt and others did not exaggerate to the point of kneeling down, they also expressed their willingness to follow Xia Changqing's lead. After all, these sailors also have their own considerations. The Dreadnought will arrive at Port Royal soon. When they arrive in that strange land, they will have to start all over again. In this case, grouping is the best choice. If they want to have a foothold in the new land, they still need a leader. The candidate for this person was originally placed on Wyatt, but after Xia Changqing emerged, they would naturally choose a person with stronger strength. Besides, even Wyatt himself meant this, so why not other sailors? After all, although Wyatt is the boatswain of the princess is just a merchant ship after all, otherwise they would not be defeated by the pirates. Although these sailors also have a heart that can kill, they are far less powerful than the vicious professional pirates. Although these sailors are just ordinary people with ordinary talents, as his first batch of subordinates, Xia Changqing did not dislike them too much. However, Xia Changqing also made 3 rules with them in advance. Everyone follows him to make a living, and he naturally has the responsibility and obligation to make sure everyone has enough food and money in their pockets. If you don't want to follow him, just tell him in advance. You can come and go freely, and he is not a dictator. But if someone secretly wants to betray everyone and do something that harms the interests of the entire group, don't blame him for saying it in advance. At the least, he will chop off his hand, and at the worst, he will chop it up and throw it into the sea to feed the sharks. Xia Changqing's murderous words made all the sailors look stern, and no one dared to doubt the truth of Xia Changqing's words. Like these sailors who huddle together for warmth and elect a leader, and everyone obeys, some people will do the same in the future. Those people are the world famous Mayfair. The origin of the Mayfair is that some Italians huddle together for warmth and unite tightly for their own interests to form an association. After Xia Changqing finished his instructions, he suddenly remembered such a thing. What he is doing now is very similar to the origin of the Mayfair. It's just that his requirements are not as strict as the Mayfair. However, the Mayfair are a lawless element. Although Xia Changqing is destined to become a pirate, he will definitely not be as evil as those vicious pirates. At most, he will be a sea adventurer of the same nature as Jack Spike. With the name of a pirate, he does the work of an adventurer. Then the organization he has established now cannot be the same as the Mayfair. Xia Changqing believes that he is still on the side of justice. Yes, that's right. He wants to make the name of the Mayfair a synonym for justice. What? From now on our organization will be called the Mayfair. I'm the leader, and you are the elders of the Mayfair. Mayfair. Wyatt looked at Xia Changqing with some doubts, and even changed his address. Boss, does this name have any special meaning? Of course there is no special meaning. It's just Xia Changqing's own bad taste. The real Mayfair was founded by Italians, and the name was also given by them. Now I'm just borrowing it. What? This is a chaotic era, and it is also an era full of opportunities. If we want to gain a foothold in this era, we can only be black-handed and black-hearted, so we will be called the Mayfair from now on. Who is in favor? Who is against? Since you, the boss, have said so, how dare we object? After Xia Changqing glared, Wyatt and others immediately smiled and praised Xia Changqing for the name he got for the organization. It was very meaningful. As for the real connotation of this name, it is not something that people with short-sightedness like them can know. And Xia Changqing's first step, to become the godfather of Royal Port, finally took a step on the Dauntless. Chapter 132, Changing Thoughts. Although Xia Changqing described a very beautiful future for the sailors, Wyatt and others still wanted to know what Xia Changqing's specific plan was. It is not an easy thing to make a name for yourself in a strange place from scratch. We don't have a good background like Captain Narrington, so he can be in a high position at a young age and take charge of the military power of the entire Royal Port, while we have to worry about our future livelihood, a sailor said with a slightly jealous tone. He seemed to be very envious of Narrington, who had become a successful person at a young age. Xia Changqing looked down on such people. A person's background is important, but acquired efforts and opportunities are also very important. Although he did not agree with the sailor's idea, his words reminded Xia Changqing. It is very difficult for some sailors who are close to the bottom of society to gain a foothold in an unfamiliar port city, but it is different for Narrington. This young captain is destined to become a big man in Royal Port, although he fell in love with Elizabeth and ended up very miserably. But it is undeniable that from now on, until Jack appears in Royal Port 8 years later, Narrington has always been a winner in life. So why can't he use this identity of a winner in life to achieve his goal? The system's task is to make him the man of the Pirate King, so he will definitely become a pirate. To be a Pirate King, he not only needs subordinates, but also pirate ships that traverse the sea. Looking at the ships in the entire Caribbean pirates world, in addition to the 3 legendary pirate ships, the British Royal Navy also has many powerful warships relying on the power of the country. And the sailing warship that Xia Changqing is now on, the Dreadnought, will be able to become Narrington's flagship in the future, which is enough to show its strength. With a ready-made warship here, why should he go far away? Xia Changqing suddenly realized that in the previous worlds, he mostly treated the original characters with a gentle attitude. This cannot be said to be a weak attitude, but in the completion of many things, it greatly reduced the efficiency. I understand. Xia Changqing came to his senses. Although it felt good to start from the bottom and become a big boss step by step, it would take too much time and there would be a lot of trouble in it. So he decided to show his cards. He was not an adventurer, but a pirate. For pirates, betrayal was not a rare thing. I'm sorry, Narrington. Wyatt and others looked at Xia Changqing with confused expressions, not knowing what was wrong with their boss and what he understood. Wyatt, get ready. The first action of our Mayfair will start soon. It's time to show the world the style of our Mayfair. Wyatt and others were still in a daze, not knowing what their boss had done. From the beginning, they didn't understand a word of what the boss said. Xia Changqing didn't force Wyatt and others to understand what he was thinking. In general, Xia Changqing has always been a lazy person in his bones. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been a otaku in Whole Village in the last world for 5 years. If the system hadn't forced him to complete the task, he wouldn't bother to do things that didn't bring him any benefits. In Xia Changqing's opinion, the benefits of becoming a pirate king were really not worth mentioning. He was more interested in the various magical items in this world. Things like the Trident of Poseidon, the Fountain of Youth, and the Mermaid were what he was interested in. Having made up his mind, Xia Changqing slung Winter over his shoulder and walked out of the room lazily. He had to talk to Captain Narrington. As for why it wasn't Governor Weatherby-Swan, it was because Xia Changqing firmly believed that power came from the barrel of a gun, and Narrington, who controlled the naval soldiers, was the most important person. Although Governor Swan was much higher in official position than Narrington, under the muzzle of a musket, all beings were equal, and Governor Swan was no exception. Xia, what do you want to talk to me about? To be honest, Narrington still had great respect for Xia Changqing, who defeated him in swordsmanship like a landslide. Narrington invited Xia Changqing to sit down at the guest seat, and took the initiative to say, would you like something to drink? Looking at Narrington like this, Xia Changqing suddenly felt a little regretful about what he was about to do, but this thought was fleeting, and Xia Changqing quickly strengthened his belief. The reason he did this now was to give Narrington a better future. If he did nothing, Narrington might go down the old path in the future, get stuck in the quagmire, and eventually die miserably. Narrington, I need control of Port Royal. What? Narrington, who was pouring wine for Xia Changqing, thought for a moment that he was hallucinating. He looked at Xia Changqing and asked in confusion, Xia, what did you say? I didn't hear it clearly. Narrington, don't doubt your hearing. You heard it right. I want to control Port Royal. In fact, I'm a pirate. Xia Changqing's attitude of I'm not pretending anymore, I'm showing my cards directly made Narrington stunned. Are you kidding me? Captain Narrington, who is still young now, can't effectively control his emotions. No, I'm telling the truth. While saying these words, Xia Changqing even had the leisure to pick up the wine that Narrington poured for him and took a sip. What do you mean? Are you confident? Narrington's face suddenly became ugly and his hand tightly grasped the hilt of the rapier. The hatred for pirates in his heart soon overwhelmed the feelings of mutual respect. What's more, Narrington and Xia Changqing had only known each other for a few days, so it was impossible for them to have too deep feelings. I didn't expect that I would be so wrong and rescue a pirate with my own hands. Now you say it so openly. Is there some conspiracy? I admit that your swordsmanship is very superb, but there are more than 60 people from my Royal Navy on the ship. You have no chance of escaping. Xia, just surrender. I can consider giving you a fair trial. Xia Changqing smiled and shook his head, looking at Narrington with a relaxed face. Narrington, since I have talked to you so frankly, I must have a trump card in hand. You don't have to trouble those innocent soldiers. That will only cause them to die in vain. Xia Changqing's eyes had already glanced at a dinner knife placed on the table, and under Narrington's vigilant gaze, he took the dinner knife leisurely. Chapter 133, Mighty and Unyielding. A table knife made of silver, which can only be used by people in high positions like Narrington. Under Narrington's vigilant eyes, the silver table knife suddenly burned, and the flames quickly spread over the entire blade. What kind of witchcraft is this? Are you still an evil wizard? Narrington's original vigilance suddenly turned into a sense of being in the face of a great enemy. In this world, all kinds of strange witchcraft are not uncommon. The cursed Flying Dutchman, Barbossa and others who turned into skeletons in the moonlight, the infamous Blackbird, who has the black witchcraft that turns people into zombies. These are all products of the world of Caribbean pirates. Although Narrington does not know the things mentioned above, it does not prevent him from knowing that there are wizards in this world. In legends, wizards are very evil. So even though Xia Changqing is a handsome young man in Narrington's eyes, he still cannot dispel his inherent impression of evil wizards. Congratulations, you got it right, Narrington. I'm indeed a wizard. Xia Changqing threw away the extinguished silver dinner knife. Although his magic power was restrained by silver, he used the system's own skills to light the dinner knife instead of magic power. The system's products must be top-notch. However, Xia Changqing's move could not shock Narrington. The captain was also well informed. In his mind, although wizards were evil and powerful, they still could not break free from the shackles of the flesh. Under the muzzle of a musket, even a wizard could be killed on the spot. It must be said that the emergence of hot weapons was a huge blow to the mysterious forces. However, Narrington did not know that, if it was the firearms from Xia Changqing's original world, it might still pose a threat to him under the interweaving of the firepower network. The firearms in this world were just emerging, and the flintlocks could not even fire continuously, so it was impossible to threaten his body that had been transformed by the blood ancestors' white blood and magic. Narrington, who could not imagine these things at all, gritted his teeth secretly, exerted force on his hands, and was about to pull out his rapier. But what Narrington did not expect was that under his force, the rapier did not move at all, and stayed firmly in the scabbard. He pulled it out from his waist with the scabbard. What happened? Puzzled, Narrington could not help but look down, and then he was horrified to find that a mass of black unknown objects was wriggling and tightly wrapped around the mouth of the scabbard. What is this? Narrington couldn't help but scream in horror. It is undeniable that, although Narrington is now a captain of the British Royal Navy, he is still only a 22-year-old young man. After facing these weird things that subverted his three views, it is inevitable to fall into fear. In fact, the massive black unknown matter was just a shadow extracted by Xia Changqing. In the dim space of the captain's room, it is very simple to extract some shadows. If Xia Changqing wanted, he could let the shadow cover the entire captain's room, let shadow tentacles grow on the walls, and turn the entire captain's room into something indescribable. However, although Xia Changqing wanted to control Narrington and let him do things for him, he did not intend to let Narrington fall into frenzy because of the dancing tentacles. He did not dare to bet on Narrington's current psychological endurance. However, even this small piece of creeping shadow power was enough to cast a shadow on Narrington's psychology. Narrington threw down his sword and opened his mouth to shout for the soldiers outside to come in and catch Xia Changqing, the monster. Xia Changqing discovered Narrington's intention, and he raised his finger and put it to his mouth. Shh, Narrington, don't make a sound. As Xia Changqing moved, Narrington was horrified to find that he could only open his mouth, but could not make any sound. However, something even more frightening happened. The unknown object attached to the scabbard of the sword he threw on the ground actually moved quickly and crawled towards him like a mollusk. Narrington's heart was about to jump to his throat. He felt a huge panic, but he couldn't make any sound. This feeling was very uncomfortable. Xia Changqing happened to be sitting at the exit of the captain's room. Narrington had nowhere to run. Now Narrington was in a dilemma. Facing the evil thing that was pressing step by step, he could only retreat again and again. But the captain's room was only so big after all. Even if Narrington was allowed to retreat as much as he wanted, where could he retreat to? However, after 2 or 3 steps, Narrington had already leaned against the wall with his back and could not retreat. In Narrington's horrified eyes, the evil thing quickly swam to his boots and then climbed up along his calves. No matter how Narrington kept slapping with his hands, it had no effect on the black shadow. This is a very normal thing. Can an ordinary person cause damage and influence to his own shadow? That is simply impossible. Just as Narrington was terrified, the black shadow jumped onto his chest, then went along his arm to his wrist, circled around, and stuck tightly to his skin, as if it had become a black birthmark on Narrington's wrist. Then Narrington suddenly felt that he could speak. Hush, Captain Narrington, speak softly and don't disturb the soldiers on the ship. Xia Changqing repeated again. This time Narrington learned to be smart. He lowered his voice with a nervous look and didn't dare to speak loudly. After all, the black shadow on his wrist was bright and a little scary. What is this? What did you do to me? Xia Changqing snapped his fingers, and Narrington suddenly felt that he had difficulty breathing. I can't feel breathing. Narrington shouted in pain. Even so, he remembered Xia Changqing's instructions and didn't dare to speak loudly. Xia Changqing immediately released the restrictions and chuckled. Don't worry, Narrington. This is just a small trick to ensure our friendship. As long as you don't want to betray our friendship, it will never work. Friendship? Bullshit friendship. The thing Narrington regrets most now is that he was kind enough to rescue the devil in front of him from the sea. Isn't this inviting a wolf into the house? Tell me, what is your purpose? If I do something unscrupulous, then I advise you to give up this idea. Even if I die, I will not do what you want. Captain Narrington said majestically. Chapter 134. Control of Port Royal. The older you are, the less courageous you are. Captain Narrington, who is young and full of passion, really thinks so in his heart. He will never succumb to a pirate, because he has no scruples. If Xia Changqing finds Governor Weatherby Swan, it will be much easier for him to achieve his goal. The governor will definitely obey Xia Changqing's wishes without saying a word and surrender. It's a pity that the governor has the title of a high-ranking official, but no corresponding military force. In the royal port, where there are all kinds of people, only Narrington, who has military force in his hands, is the most suitable candidate. After Xia Changqing explained again and again, he finally succeeded in making Narrington understand the truth. Even if Narrington wanted to die with him, he was not afraid of the naval soldiers on the dreadnought. Although Narrington didn't believe it, as long as there was a possibility of this, his life might be sacrificed in vain. Norrington understood the principle of taking things step by step, so after thinking about it for a long time, Norrington decided to stabilize Xia Changqing first, and he would definitely find a chance to turn the tables in the future. The confrontation between Xia Changqing and Norrington did not cause any disturbance on the ship. It seemed that nothing happened between the two, but Norrington would never get close to Xia Changqing again. After nothing happened, Xia Changqing could not withstand Elizabeth's soft and hard grinding, and finally agreed to teach her swordsmanship. Governor Swan, who was a daughter slave, could not stop Elizabeth's idea at all. It's just that there was no training wooden sword for practice on the dreadnought. Neither Xia Changqing nor Governor Swan was at ease to let Elizabeth practice directly with a sharp rapier. There was no way. Xia Changqing could only temporarily teach Elizabeth some physical training skills. The water-dance swordsmanship focused on dexterity, and the training of physical fitness was a prerequisite before learning swordsmanship. In such a leisurely day, the dreadnought sailed through the wind and waves and finally arrived at the destination of this trip, Royal Port. Port Royal has just been brought under the rule of the British Empire, and all the order on this land needs to be rebuilt. After the dreadnought arrived at Port Royal, the affairs became busy. Xia Changqing did not give Norrington any instructions on the issue of taking over the military power of Port Royal. In this regard, he believed that Norrington should be more suitable than him. Now in the entire Caribbean Sea, the British Royal Navy is the most powerful, and Port Royal is a colony that the United Kingdom has already finalized. It is very easy for Norrington to take over the entire military power of Port Royal. Norrington, who is second to none in the entire Port Royal, is still full of pride in his heart, but because he is controlled by a wizard, this makes Norrington feel like a thorn in his throat. Many times, Norrington has been considering whether to gather all his soldiers and attack Xia Changqing directly in an unexpected way, to take down this evil wizard in one fell swoop. But when Norrington looked down at the black shadow wrapped around his wrist, he couldn't help but give up this idea. Wait a little longer. Before you are absolutely sure, forbearance is the way to go. However, soon after Norrington completely mastered the military power of Port Royal, Xia Changqing found Norrington and put forward his first request: eliminate the lawless element among the lower and middle classes of Port Royal. As the first batch of Xia Changqing's men, Wyatt and others naturally cannot be idle. The task given to him by Xia Changqing is to control the forces of the lower and middle classes of Port Royal as soon as possible. Let the lower and middle classes of the entire Port Royal have only one voice, that is, the voice of their Mayfair. As a newcomer, Wyatt said that this was simply impossible. As an important maritime hub in the entire Caribbean Sea, Port Royal has many immigrants. These people mixed in Port Royal, forming large and small forces, mixed with fish and dragons, countless. And those who can be cruel enough to cross the ocean to make a living are not easy to deal with. Wyatt once doubted whether his boss had lost his mind and said these irrelevant words. Xia Changqing did not explain too much. While Wyatt was puzzled, the royal port soon ushered in a severe crackdown. Wyatt was not wrong about some things. The royal port was indeed a mixed bag of people, with all kinds of forces. But there was one thing that Wyatt did not expect. The royal port was now under the control of the British Royal Navy. The British Royal Navy was led by Norrington, and Norrington had to obey Xia Changqing's orders. As the saying goes, a new official takes 3 fires when he takes office. Although the crackdown was ordered by Xia Changqing, Norrington also wanted to take this opportunity to establish his authority in the royal port and show the people of the royal port that he was the one who had the final say. The vigorous crackdown began, and many pirates who had mixed into the royal port were unlucky. Norrington had no mercy on these people and hanged them all directly to kill the chicken to scare the monkey. The forces of various black society nature were affected. In this crackdown, the atmosphere of the entire royal port was cleared up. Among them, a force took the opportunity to rise, and an organization called the Mayfair stood out. With the cooperation of Norrington, Wyatt led the Mayfair to develop and expand rapidly, and became the largest force in the lower and middle classes of Port Royal. And this process took only 3 months. There was no way. When other forces were attacked by the Navy, the Mayfair members received special treatment and did not suffer any embarrassment. Although people from other forces discovered this, they had no way to deal with it. In the colony of Port Royal, The British Royal Navy had the biggest fist. These large and small forces, in addition to joining the Mafia and becoming a part of the Mafia, can only pray not to be targeted by the Navy. If they are labeled as pirates, they will only be hanged. In such a barbaric era, it is not uncommon for such things to happen. What is even more talked about is that the leader of the Mafia organization is actually a young man from the mysterious East, which is far from the British people everyone guessed. No one knows what the relationship between the young man and the Royal Navy is, but it is undeniable that the young man quickly became the talker among the lower and middle classes of Port Royal. With Narrington above and Wyatt below, Xia Changqing easily achieved his goal of controlling the entire royal port with the help of these two people. As for the fact that there were some rich people in the royal port, Xia Changqing did not take it to heart. Although those people could contact some noble officials in the UK, the royal port was far away, and they could not make a big wave. Chapter 135 Rapid Development. Port Royal, the rich area. Those who can live in the rich area are all rich or noble. Even the highest official of the entire Port Royal, Governor Swan, has his residence here. Next to the governor's mansion, there is also a 3-story villa. The owner of this villa is a young man from the mysterious East. This person is Xia Changqing. Although he is very low-key in Port Royal, his name has spread unconsciously. Friend of James Narrington, teacher of the governor's daughter, and godfather of the Mafia. Although the first two titles allow Xia Changqing to have a place in Port Royal, it is his title of godfather of the Mafia that is feared by others. However, this title is only circulated in secret, and no one dares to mention this title in front of Xia Changqing. According to Xia Changqing's words, he is a good man who abides by the law, and the Mafia is not a black and evil organization. Those who dare to say this must be responsible. It was another morning. Before Xia Changqing got up, a maid came to help him dress and wash. After pushing open the heavy curtains, the blue sea and blue sky appeared in front of Xia Changqing. Facing such a scene, Xia Changqing felt that his mind was about to be broadened. "Sir, Mr. Gibbs has been waiting for you downstairs for a long time." The young maid looked at Xia Changqing with burning eyes and admiration. This young master was in a high position, young and rich, and the mansion was still lacking a hostess. There were countless young women in Royal Port who were eyeing this position. Xia Changqing certainly had no time to pay attention to the young maid's little thoughts. He stretched out his arms and let the maid put on complicated and cumbersome clothes for him. There was no way. His status was different now. It was no longer appropriate to wear the leather armor he used to take risks. After coming to Royal Port, Xia Changqing had not had to take action for a long time, let alone transform into a dragon. As for Gibbs, who was waiting for him downstairs, Xia Changqing was not too enthusiastic. Today, Gibbs is not a loyal crew member of Captain Jack. Today, he is still a member of the British Royal Navy. Half an hour later, Xia Changqing, who had finished tidying up, slowly walked down the stairs. After noticing Xia Changqing coming downstairs, Gibbs immediately stood up from the chair he was sitting on and bowed respectfully to Xia Changqing. "Dear Mr. Xia, good morning." Gibbs' heart had long been calm, but he had also experienced a very complicated mental journey. After all, Gibbs witnessed Xia Changqing's rescue from the sea, his fortune, and his becoming a big man who had the final say in Royal Port. No one expected that this young man would achieve such an achievement in such a short time. Xia Changqing slightly pressed his hand down, his expression indifferent. "Please sit down, Mr. Gibbs. What would you like to drink?" "Mr. Xia, don't be too polite. I'm here to convey the words of Major Narrington. Please speak." Xia Changqing waved his hand. "That's right. After being in Port Royal for such a long time, Narrington was promoted again, from captain to major. This promotion speed can be said to be very fast. In fact, even without Xia Changqing's intervention, Narrington would have been promoted to Brigadier General in 8 years. It only took 8 years to go from captain to Brigadier General. Now with Xia Changqing's support, it is normal for Narrington to rise even faster. Immediately, Gibbs also stated the purpose of his trip. "Mr. Xia, the Royal Navy has discovered traces of pirates, and merchant ships from North America have been attacked in the waters near Royal Port. Major Narrington plans to send the Navy to encircle and suppress the newly emerged pirates." Xia Changqing knocked on the table with his hand and said casually, "Let's have breakfast." Then he turned his attention to Jibs. As usual, I will ask Wyatt to prepare. All the materials seized by the Royal Navy will be handed over to Wyatt for processing. Thank you for your generosity. I wish you a pleasant meal. I will take my leave first. Stay and have breakfast together. Xia Changqing invited sincerely. No, thank you for your kindness, sir. I have already had breakfast. After Jibs finished speaking, he immediately said goodbye and left. The purpose of his trip was very simple, just to inform Xia Changqing that the Royal Navy was going out to suppress pirates. Long before, Xia Changqing and Narrington had made a plan. Narrington defeated the pirates as his own merit, and all the materials seized from the pirate ship were handed over to the Mayfair. Not only did Narrington get benefits, but the Navy soldiers under his command could also fill their pockets. This mode of cooperation has been going on for a long time. In fact, in this matter, Jibs only needs to find Wyatt to achieve his goal. But in order to show respect for Xia Changqing, Narrington would always notify Xia Changqing before going out to sea. Xia Changqing had to sigh for such a knowledgeable Narrington. People will change. The original passionate young man has also smoothed his edges and corners with a change of status. After experiencing the taste of power, Narrington could no longer make up his mind to turn against Xia Changqing. After Jibs left, Xia Changqing began to enjoy breakfast with peace of mind. At this moment, a crisp voice rang from outside the door. Good morning, Mr. Jibs. Good morning, Miss. After this greeting, a teenage girl ran in. Teacher, good morning. Elizabeth's face was full of smiles, and her cheeks were flushed, because she ran over. Elizabeth, have you had breakfast? Xia Changqing also smiled and called Elizabeth to enjoy breakfast together. Since they settled down next to the governor's mansion, Elizabeth's relationship with Xia Changqing has been getting better and better. On the one hand, it was because Xia Changqing taught her the water dance sword technique, and on the other hand, in the huge governor's mansion, Governor Swan was busy every day, and Elizabeth was a little lonely. And Xia Changqing happened to be an idle person, doing nothing every day, so it was easy for the two to get along. Here I want to talk about Will, who was originally going to be an apprentice blacksmith. After Xia Changqing established the Mayfair, the upright Will became a member of the Mayfair. The boy discovered a wider world. As Xia Changqing repeatedly emphasized, the Mayfair he founded was not a black society force, but a force that could bring benefits to Royal Port. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136 Treasure Boy. Xia Changqing is now the most leisurely person in the entire Royal Port. His daily work is to drink tea and watch the scenery, or teach Elizabeth the simple water dance swordsmanship. Elizabeth, who received an education completely different from her original destiny, yearns for the sea and adventure even more fiercely. Every now and then, she would whisper a few words in Xia Changqing's ear, wanting Xia Changqing to take her to the sea for adventure. But Xia Changqing just looked at Elizabeth with a smile. I also yearn for adventures. It's almost time. When you grow up a little bit, we will travel the Caribbean together and become the pirate king of the Caribbean. Xia, you didn't lie to me. I didn't lie to you. This is Xia Changqing's promise. He is very patiently waiting for Elizabeth to grow up little by little, seeing her grow from a little girl to a graceful lady, but the wildness in her eyes has not changed with the passage of time. The more drastic change is the Royal Port, this port city, which has undergone rapid changes. What remains unchanged is Xia Changqing, and the years have not left any traces on his face. Whenever Narrington saw this, he felt very uncomfortable. This wizard who had this look 6 years ago still had this young look 6 years later. More importantly, seeing Elizabeth, who had grown into a beautiful girl, getting older, Narrington, who had never been married, could not help but be moved by her. Moreover, Elizabeth's father was the governor of Port Royal, and the two of them were a perfect match. In this case, Narrington was naturally very displeased with Xia Changqing, who was very close to Elizabeth. This displeasure was more unbearable than Xia Changqing's use of evil witchcraft to control his behavior. Xia Changqing was also unwilling to see Norrington, who always looked at him coldly. Seeing that Elizabeth had become an 18-year-old girl, Xia Changqing, who had been silent for many years, was very quiet and finally remembered that he still had his own mission to complete. However, in Xia Changqing's view, the task of becoming a pirate king was nothing but an easy task for him now. Not to mention other things, Norrington's dreadnought alone was enough for him to be king in the Caribbean. For Xia Changqing, becoming a pirate king is just a trivial matter. What he wants to do more is to travel the Caribbean Sea and explore those unknown treasures and secrets. There are many secrets on the sea. In the entire Caribbean Sea, who can know all the treasures? Xia Changqing immediately thought of a name: Captain Jack Sparrow. Jack, who has a magic compass, can use the compass in his hand to point to the items he wants in his mind. This is undoubtedly a magic weapon for those who want to seek treasure. Moreover, Jack, who has experienced enough adventures, is very familiar with things on the sea. He can find the fountain of youth and mermaids. Come here, help me find Wyatt. Xia Changqing stood in front of the French window of his mansion and said to the maid behind him. He just happened to have the power in his hands. It is difficult to find Jack's whereabouts in the vast world, but it is also easy to say. A moment later, Wyatt appeared in Xia Changqing's mansion. Sir, you're looking for me? 6 years have left a few more wrinkles on the face of this Englishman, but his temperament has changed dramatically. Now that he holds a high position in Port Royal, he only shows a respectful attitude in front of Xia Changqing. Wyatt, I need you to do something. Xia Changqing turned around and motioned for Wyatt to sit down. Speak to me, sir. Xia Changqing looked at Wyatt with burning eyes and stated his request. Let someone spread the word. I need to know the whereabouts of Jack Sparrow. A reward of £10,000 will be offered to anyone who can bring Jack Sparrow to Port Royal. Even if Jack cannot be brought here, as long as you can tell his exact location, there will be a reward of £5,000. Wyatt was directly shocked by Xia Changqing's generosity. Sir, are you serious? I have heard of Jack Sparrow's reputation. He is just a notorious pirate. With all due respect, he does not seem to be worth the price. £10,000 is not a small amount. For pirates who want to get rich today, this is a huge sum of money that is enough to drive people crazy. Wyatt, Jack Sparrow is not a simple pirate. Do as I say. Spread the news. I want to find him as soon as possible. Xia Changqing tapped the table with his fingers. People like Wyatt naturally did not know the role of Jack, but there was no need for him to explain more to Wyatt. Looking at Xia Changqing, who was so persistent, Wyatt felt helpless, but he would not oppose Xia Changqing on such a matter. He stood up and bowed to Xia Changqing. As you wish, sir. I will make Jack Sparrow appear in front of you as soon as possible. After Wyatt left, the whole royal port was boiling. Not to mention that this matter was a request from Mr. Xia. Just the £10,000 made all the people who made a living in royal port crazy. Before the news spread to other places, countless people sailed out to sea, as if looking for treasure, to find Jack Sparrow. In fact, this description is not wrong. Today, Jack has really become a treasure, making everyone crazy. Have you heard that the mysterious Mayfair godfather in Port Royal has offered a reward of £10,000 to find Jack Sparrow? I've heard about this too. That Mayfair godfather is so rich that he actually took out £10,000 just to find a person. If I have a chance in the future, I must go to Port Royal and take him down. You forget it. That Mayfair godfather is not someone that small pirates like us can offend. Aren't we talking about Jack Sparrow? Guys, that's £10,000. Aren't you tempted? Although I don't know how Jack Sparrow offended that godfather, it can't prevent us brothers from making money. The discussions of the surrounding pirates kept coming into Gibbs' ears, which made him worry about his old friend. Gibbs is now in Tortuga Port, a paradise for pirates. After resigning from the Royal Navy, Gibbs came to Tortuga Port and became a free pirate again. Chapter 137. Walking into a trap. Gibbs suddenly felt that the rum in his hand was not tasty. He slammed the glass heavily on the table, wondering whether to find Jack. After all, that was a 10,000 gold list. This was too tempting. I think Jack would be tempted by it. Just thinking about returning to Port Royal and facing the terrifying young man, Gibbs began to retreat again. The Oriental who became the uncrowned king of Port Royal in just a few years made Gibbs' heart full of vigilance, which was why he resigned from the Royal Navy. Although part of it was for freedom, more of the reason was because of Xia Changqing. Port Royal, nominally a British colony, was secretly controlled by an Oriental. Gibbs didn't know what conspiracy was inside, and he discovered this. In order not to be affected, he got out in advance. Now for Jack and his old friend, Gibbs decided to return to Port Royal. Before Jack was found, Gibbs planned to find out why the Oriental man named Xia offered a huge reward for Jack. In Port Royal, no matter how turbulent the outside world was, Xia Changqing remained the same. The news of offering a huge reward for Jack's whereabouts was heard by many people. Many people who were close to Xia Changqing came to inquire about it, but Xia Changqing made excuses to brush them off. Xia Changqing was very tight-lipped. Except for him, no one knew why he spent so much money to find a pirate. This made Gibbs, who had already returned to Port Royal, very depressed. He also took out a lot of money to find out the information he wanted, but it was all in vain. However, Gibbs' depression did not last too long. Within a month, a rumor spread to Port Royal. Jack Sparrow has appeared. He was not found by someone, but he stood up himself. It is rumored that the original words of the non-famous pirate Captain Jack Sparrow were that, since anyone who could bring him to Port Royal could get a reward of £10,000, then if he appeared in Port Royal, would the 10,000 gold coins belong to him? There is nothing wrong with this logic, but when it is unknown whether the owner who issued the reward was kind or malicious, Jack stood up himself, which made people think that he was either a fool or a madman. The famous Captain Jack Sparrow is naturally not a fool or a madman. He is skilled and courageous, and has experienced many great adventures of life and death, but the final result is that he survived well. Jack likes adventure. When Xia Changqing issued a reward for him, Jack also became interested in Xia Changqing, a plain masked man. There are adventures everywhere, and now it is just an adventure in Port Royal. So, one day a month later, on a sunny day, Jack Sparrow quietly sailed to Port Royal alone. Because the boat he was on was just a small boat carried by a large ship, no one would pay too much attention to him in the royal port where merchant ships from all over the world kept coming and going. Of course, it's not that no one completely ignored Jack. In the royal port, controlled by Xia Changqing, he certainly wouldn't let a stranger come and go casually. However, someone found Jack's whereabouts faster than the sheriff. In order to find Jack's whereabouts as soon as possible, Gibbs waited on the dock of the royal port after hearing the rumor, looking forward to Jack's arrival. Hard work pays off. Gibbs' persistence brought a good result. He was lucky enough to see Jack first. Before the sheriff came up, Gibbs took the lead and ran to steps and came to Jack. "Ah, Gibbs, I didn't expect to meet you here." Captain Jack had a charming taste, even if he just stood there. He pinched his orchid fingers in his hands and was happy to see his old friend. "Hush, Jack, don't talk, I'll handle it." Gibbs ran to Jack and whispered quickly, but before he could tell him more, a voice sounded behind him. "Excuse me, sir, please register your information first. I'll help him. This is my cousin, who came to me from London." Gibbs immediately took over the conversation, winked at Jack, and turned around with a simple smile on his face. "His name is Jomi Gibbs. My cousin, from London." Gibbs smiled and handed over a few shillings in his hand without leaving any trace. With the guarantee of this person who looked like a local of Port Royal, Jack easily got away with it. After all, even Xia Changqing couldn't come up with an identity recognition system that violated the times, especially in a port like Port Royal, where new people came and left every day. It was impossible to find out the origins of everyone. After sending the sheriff away, Gibbs turned around to find Jack, but was horrified to find that his old friend was already looking at the Dauntless parked in the distance with his eyes shining, and his feet were unconsciously moving towards it. "Jack, are you crazy?" Gibbs stepped forward quickly and grabbed Jack, fearing that if he let go, the daring pirate leader would fly away directly. "Follow me." Jack did not ask why, he just reluctantly looked at the Dauntless in the distance for a few more times, and then, under the leadership of Gibbs, he integrated into the royal port. Half an hour later, in a tavern with a mix of good and bad people, Jibbs pulled Jack to sit in the corner of the tavern, and after symbolically ordering 2 glasses of rum and sending the waiter away, he immediately looked at Jack in front of him with a look of disappointment. "Jack, I didn't expect you to be so bold and come to Port Royal. Do you want to live? Don't be nervous, Jibbs. It's rare for us to meet. Let's have a drink first." Jack didn't show any nervousness on his face. Instead, he comforted Jibbs. "No, Jack, you don't know that person at all. Do you know who is the person who offered a reward for you? He is the secret controller of the entire Port Royal, the godfather of the Mafia. We can't afford to offend such a person." "Oh, then he is so powerful. I can't wait to meet him. I heard that he offered a reward of £10,000 for me. He is so rich." At this point, Jack gave Jibbs a reassuring look. "When I get the money, I will share some with you." Chapter 138. You are invited. "Jack, you're crazy. I regret meeting you." Jibbs covered his forehead with a headache. He certainly understood what his old friend was thinking. A proud man like Jack, when he learned that someone wanted to see him at a high price, whether for money or for his pride, Jack had to come. Hiding from place to place and not being exposed to the public was not what Jack wanted at all. Rather than being discovered and betraying his whereabouts, Jack thought he might as well take the initiative. As for whether that person wanted his life, Jack thought that this possibility would definitely not happen. He was not self-deprecating. Jack knew that he was not worth £10,000 at all. If someone really took out £10,000 to take his life, that person must be a fool. Jack did not think that the person who could secretly control the royal port was a fool, so the possibility that the other party wanted his life naturally did not exist. After comforting Jibbs, Jack held the rum and began to drink it. Since he lost the Black Pearl, he had not been as happy as today for a long time. The reunion of old friends was worth a few more drinks. Although Jack had no money, after a few glasses of rum, Jibbs immediately forgot his troubles. The two toasted each other and told stories of their adventures. The atmosphere was very friendly. Bang! At this moment, the door of the tavern was suddenly pushed open. In the puzzled eyes of the drinkers, a team of Royal Navy quickly surrounded the entire tavern. Wyatt walked in leisurely. He stretched out his hand and stopped the tavern owner, who wanted to run forward with a flattering smile on his face. "Don't be nervous, everyone. I don't mean to disturb you. But who is Mr. Jack Sparrow? Please stand up. My master invites you." "Jack Sparrow? That pirate? Is he in the tavern?" Wyatt's words fell, and in an instant, the whole tavern was full of discussions. Jack Sparrow's name, through the bounty, has been known to everyone in Royal Port. The drinkers shook their heads and looked around, wanting to see the true face of Jack Sparrow. In this situation, Jack and Jibbs, who were in the corner of the tavern, lowered their heads and acted like ostriches, trying not to be discovered, were too conspicuous. "Oh, Mr. Jibbs." There was no surprise in Wyatt's tone. The reason why he could find this place and was sure that Jack Sparrow was here was because they had been keeping an eye on Jibbs. Because Wyatt happened to know that Jack Sparrow and Jibbs were good friends, so after Jibbs hid his identity and returned to Port Royal and was recognized by Wyatt's people, he had been sending people to keep an eye on Jibbs. If Jibbs knew that it was because of him that Jack was exposed, I don't know what his expression would be. "Haha, long time no see, Mr. Wyatt." Jibbs laughed and stood up and laughed awkwardly, trying to get close to him. However, Wyatt didn't give him this opportunity at all. "Mr. Jibbs, Mr. Sparrow, please come in. Mr. Xia has a banquet in his house and has been waiting for you for a long time." Ka. When Wyatt stretched out his hand, the sound of muskets being raised rang out one after another, and the black muzzles were aimed at two people. Jack and Jibbs looked at each other and chose to surrender very sincerely. After the group left, the discussion in the tavern continued. Under Wyatt's escort, Jack and Jibbs did not resist at all. They were taken to the rich area and came to Xia Changqing's mansion without resistance. Xia Changqing's magnificent mansion directly attracted Jack's attention. Since stepping into the door of the house, Jack's eyes have been wandering around, on the one hand admiring the furnishings, and on the other hand calculating the route to escape later. Before entering the reception room, the guards searched Jack and searched out the muskets. compasses and other items he carried with him. This made Jack very dissatisfied. "I'm a guest invited by your master. How dare you treat me like this? Be careful or I will complain to him later." "Jack, be quiet and think of a way to get out of this." Jibbs was dejected. He was not surprised that Jack was still energetic. He knew what kind of person Jack was. After all the personal belongings were searched out, Jack and Jibbs were put into the reception room. The two people pushed the door carefully and were immediately surprised to find that there was only one person in the reception room. Xia Changqing sat at one end of the large dining table and observed Jack, who had just entered, with interest. Looking at his very familiar enchanting steps and the orchid fingers that unconsciously raised on his hands, Xia Changqing smiled knowingly. This was Captain Jack Sparrow. "Please take a seat, Captain Jack Sparrow, and you, my old friend, Mr. Jibbs." When Xia Changqing spoke, Jack's eyes, which were looking around, were involuntarily attracted to him. Even Jack, who was always calm, couldn't help showing surprise on his face. Wow, the person who is said to control royal port is actually such a young man. Hearing Jack's surprise, Jibbs couldn't help but whispered in his ear, "When I met him 6 years ago, he looked like this." Jack's surprise became even more intense, and then he looked at Xia Changqing eagerly. "Dear sir, can you tell me your skincare secret? Being exposed to the wind and sun on the sea every day has made my skin too bad." Xia Changqing finally couldn't help laughing. To be honest, after seeing Jack in person, he knew he wouldn't be disappointed. "Let's sit down and talk. The delicacies on the table are all prepared by me for you. Please don't hesitate to enjoy them." Compared with the worried Jibbs, Jack was very open-minded. Xia Changqing asked him to enjoy them to his heart's content, so he enjoyed them without hesitation. "Mr. Xia, it's been a long time. I wonder what you want to find Jack for." Jibbs was the first to ask the question in his mind. Before getting the answer, he always felt empty and uneasy. "Don't worry, Mr. Jibbs, I have no ill intentions." Xia Changqing knocked on the table, and immediately a guard came to him with a tray full of Jack's personal belongings. "The reason why I went to such great lengths to meet Captain Jack Sparrow is that I want his help with something." Jack was very satisfied with Xia Changqing calling him Captain Jack Sparrow. He raised his head and cast a puzzled look at Xia Changqing. Chapter 139, An Irresistible Temptation. Just because of the title of captain, Jack couldn't just go along with him. He still had to listen to what this young oriental man wanted. Xia Changqing took out Jack's compass from the tray beside him and opened it with a click in Jack's incredible eyes. The needle that was supposed to point to the south was spinning like a headless fly in Xia Changqing's hand, with no intention of stopping. "Interesting," Xia Changqing whispered softly, and the magic power in his body instantly dissipated and controlled the needle. The needle did stop, but when Xia Changqing released the magic control, the needle without any force started to spin quickly again. This treasure blessed by the goddess of the sea is indeed not something Xia Changqing can crack now. Snap. Xia Changqing closed the compass again and threw it back into the tray. "Captain Jack Sparrow, I know you are a great adventurer. Let's get straight to the point. I need a guide at sea, and I think you are the right person." "Sir, you really think highly of me?" "Well, I admit that I'm a great adventurer. I wonder where you want to go? You need me as a guide." Jack smiled and agreed to Xia Changqing's praise. Xia Changqing stared at Jack, but the words he said surprised Jack. "Isle of Death, White Wave Bay, Fountain of Youth. I want to see all these places. In the entire Caribbean Sea, only you have such ability." Jack was speechless for a moment because of Xia Changqing's words, and then he immediately squeezed out an ugly smile on his face. "I can't do what you asked for. These are all the legendary unknown places you said. I also want to see them myself, but I really can't find them. Captain Jack Sparrow, don't rush to refuse. You haven't heard my reward yet." "What reward?" Jack shouted subconsciously, and then he immediately realized that he had said the wrong thing. However, Xia Changqing didn't care. He chuckled and said a condition that Jack couldn't refuse. "Black Pearl." "What did you say?" After hearing the name, Jack stood up excitedly and shouted, "This is impossible." Xia Changqing understood what Jack meant by impossible. He said calmly, "Nothing is impossible, Jack. I know you very well. If you agree to my proposal, I can let you get the Black Pearl back." Otherwise, you may never see her again in your life. Before Jack finished speaking, Xia Changqing raised his hand to interrupt him. I wonder if you still recognize this gold coin? Jack narrowed his eyes, and his face no longer had the frivolous look of the past. Aztec gold coin. Jack said word by word. The Aztec gold coin that should have existed on the island of death was also one of the reasons why Barbossa betrayed him. Since you know this is an Aztec gold coin, Jack, have you heard of the Aztec curse? Jack frowned and fell into deep thought. Of course, he had heard of the Aztec curse. Xia Changqing understood. Very good. Now that you know about the Aztec curse, that saves me a lot of words. Just as you thought, after your first mate Mr. Barbossa betrayed you and became the captain of the Black Pearl, they were cursed by the Aztec gold coin. The Aztec curse turned them into pitiful creatures without taste and touch, but had to endure endless cold and thirst, and became skeletons under the moonlight. Only by finding back the Aztec gold coins they spent, dyeing them with blood, and putting them back into the stone cabinet containing the gold coins can the curse be lifted. For many years, Barbossa and his crew have been wandering around the world, just to find all the Aztec gold coins. They were even close to success at one point. They only needed to get the last gold coin to escape the cage of the curse. At this point, Xia Changqing raised the Aztec gold coin sandwiched between his index and middle fingers. In the sunlight, the gold coin shone brightly. That's right, Jack. This is the last Aztec gold coin that Barbossa has been searching for so hard. Without this coin, Barbossa and his companions will be unable to find their way back to the sea. They can only drive your Black Pearl and wander the sea like ghosts. Make your choice, Jack. Whether you can get the Black Pearl back depends on your thoughts. Jack, who finally understood everything after Xia Changqing's explanation, couldn't help but smack his lips. I feel so sorry for Barbossa. Mr. Gibbs, you see, this is the fate of a traitor. Captain Jack Sparrow? Xia Changqing's tone rose by 1 degree, and anyone could hear the anger in his tone. Okay, I promise you. Jack shouted immediately, you win. The Black Pearl is a reward that I can't refuse. Hearing this, Xia Changqing smiled with satisfaction. He had already expected Jack to agree. The Black Pearl was as important to Jack as his life. When the Black Pearl sank into the sea, in order to salvage her, Jack agreed to David Jones's request to serve on the Flying Dutchman for 100 years, not to mention that Xia Changqing only asked him to be a guide. The two sides reached a pleasant agreement, and the next moment, Jack couldn't help but urge, Mr. Xia, when can I see my baby again? Don't worry, Jack, you have been waiting for so many years, can't you wait for a few days? Xia Changqing looked at Jack unhappily, then he turned around and ordered, go and invite Narrington and Wyatt here, I have something important to discuss with them. Yes, sir. After Xia Changqing's order was issued, an attendant immediately walked out of the hall. Because of the escort of Jack and Gibbs, Wyatt did not leave, and was still waiting outside the hall. A moment later, the attendant invited another powerful person in Royalport. Excuse me for being blunt, Mr. Xia, a notorious pirate like this should be thrown into jail instead of being allowed to sit here and enjoy delicious food. After Narrington stepped into the hall and saw Jack in disheveled clothes, he immediately said unhappily, hanging every pirate to serve as a warning to others is Narrington's attitude. Chapter 140 Plan. Narrington sat on the other side of the long table, and he didn't have any good face towards Jack. On the contrary, Jack continued to do his own thing, as if the more unhappy Narrington was, the happier he was. Everyone, please be quiet. Xia Changqing just coughed lightly, and directly attracted everyone's attention, making everyone present look at him respectfully. Mr. Narrington, from now on, Mr. Jack Sparrow will be the navigator of my ship, and he is no longer a pirate. Xia Changqing smiled lightly, and reassigned Jack an identity. After hearing the news, Narrington was stunned for a moment, and then he immediately reacted and nodded to Xia Changqing. As you wish, sir. Although Narrington didn't look at Jack again, his expression calmed down, and was no longer cold. Very good, I called you here not only for this matter. Another thing is that there will be a battle in Port Royal, and I hope you can be prepared. Please rest assured, sir, the Royal Navy is ready to fight at any time. Who are our opponents this time? Pirates? Narrington was very motivated. He loved to fight pirates and then destroy them. No, Mr. Narrington, don't take it lightly. Although your opponents are also pirates this time, they are different from ordinary pirates. I hope you can remember what I'm going to say next. Xia Changqing then told Narrington and Wyatt about the immortality of Babus and others. Although Narrington was not afraid of fighting a group of immortal pirates, he still frowned. When muskets and swords had no effect on these people, he was thinking about how to defeat the enemy. You don't have to be nervous. Although those pirates are immortal, their fighting power is not beyond the scope of ordinary people. Since ordinary weapons can't hurt them, let's build some heavy weapons. Maybe you can prepare more fishing nets and catch those pirates like a school of fish. Yes, this is a good idea. Since we can't destroy them, we can catch them. They are just a group of pirates. They can't escape from our palms. Xia Changqing's words gave Narrington some inspiration. In fact, under the influence of Xia Changqing, the navy stationed in Royal Port is not as useless as before. Although the navy today cannot be called elite, it is still easy to deal with some unorganized and undisciplined pirates. Under Xia Changqing's arrangement, Narrington and Wyatt immediately started intensive and accelerated training in order to prevent Barbossa from bringing people to attack at night, so as to transform into a hideous skeleton under the moonlight and hit the morale of the navy soldiers. Special training is very necessary. They don't need to be fearless of the skeleton pirates, as long as they don't lose their composure. After the research of Narrington and others, they decided to place the battlefield on a small island not far from Port Royal, evacuate the residents on the island in advance, dig traps, and then the dreadnought and the interceptor will be on standby at sea not far from the island, waiting for the Black Pearl to appear, and outflanking it in one fell swoop. The plan was perfect, but I don't know what effect it will achieve when it comes to actual combat. Time soon came to a month later. After Narrington reported that the navy soldiers were ready, Xia Changqing knew it was time to implement the plan. He took Jack and Jibs and the group took a boat to a small island not far from Port Royal. At this time, the entire island was deserted. When Xia Changqing stepped onto the island, he immediately found the navy soldiers who formed a tight line. Nodding with satisfaction, Xia Changqing took out the Aztec gold coins in the expectant eyes of everyone. Can this gold coin attract Barbossa? When the time came, Jack couldn't help but jump out to question. And it wasn't just Jack. Narrington, Wyatt and others also had some doubts in their eyes. They felt that Xia Changqing was too childish. However, because he knew Xia Changqing's identity as a wizard, Narrington would not jump out to question like Jack. If he was slapped in the face at that time, it would be ugly. Then let's wait and see. Xia Changqing didn't explain too much. Facts speak louder than words. He picked up the Aztec gold coin, threw it forward, and just injured it in the seawater so easily. Plop. The sound of the gold coin falling into the water sounded, and then under the gaze of everyone, the golden Aztec gold coin slowly sank on the beach. That's it? Jack looked at the Aztec gold coin that had nothing happened, and his mouth drooped. His face was a little depressed. He was looking forward to seeing the Black Pearl again. He was really stupid, really, to believe in a mysterious oriental man. However, before Jack could fall into deeper annoyance, he saw the Aztec gold coin, which had only touched the seawater a little, suddenly jumped, and then a violent wave spread out in all directions with the gold coin as the center, as fast as thunder. The people who were almost shaken by the sudden vibration looked at the Aztec gold coin in disbelief. After they stood firm, they didn't expect that such a small gold coin could emit such a huge power. I don't know if it was their illusion, but it seemed that the whole ocean trembled. Okay, as long as Barbossa can sense the movement here, he will definitely come to this island. Everyone, be ready. Xia Changqing interrupted the people who were still in shock, then bent down to pick up the Aztec gold coin from the seawater and put it back in his pocket. Everything that could be done had been done. Now they needed to do was to wait for the arrival of the Black Pearl. This wait made Xia Changqing and others wait until the evening. This was the 7th yawn that Jack couldn't help but yawn. Damn it, there's still no sign of the Black Pearl. I don't think Barbossa will come tonight. Let's go to bed. Even Jack, who was thinking about seeing the Black Pearl, found it difficult to persist in the face of sleepiness. When Jack said this, Wyatt, Jibs and others who were surrounding the temporary command center couldn't help but show eager looks. It was already the second half of the night, when people were the most sleepy. Xia Changqing also began to think about whether he had made a wrong estimate. Even if the Black Pearl was the fastest ship in the Caribbean, the other party might be too far away from here. It would take some time for Barbossa to come. Chapter 141 Ambush. At midnight, the sky was covered with dark clouds, blocking the only moonlight that could cast a ray of light. Looking outside from the temporary command post, there was only a dark area, which was so dark that it made people panic. Thanks to Xia Changqing's training, the willpower of the Navy in Royal Port was still strong, so they could remain quiet in this situation. I don't know when it started, a wisp of mist began to spread from the sea to the island, and Xia Changqing smelled a hint of ominous breath. Jack, Wyatt, cheer up. Something happened. The drowsy people suddenly looked serious and recovered their spirits. They looked at each other, and Wyatt walked out of the house and squinted his eyes to observe the situation on the sea. But there was no movement around, and the Navy soldiers did not give any warning, and Wyatt did not find anything unusual. However, wisps of mist had floated in front of Wyatt and began to appear around the house, which made Wyatt frown slightly. This unusual breath made him jump with fear. Sir, it's foggy. Wyatt returned to the house and said to Xia Changqing. As the fog spread on the vast sea, without anyone noticing, a pitch black ship quietly slid to the edge of the island. The one coming was the Black Pearl. Now the captain of the Black Pearl, the infamous Hector Barbossa, was standing on the bow of the Black Pearl, staring at this small island. After a long time, a grim smile suddenly appeared on his no longer young face. My crew, our chance to get rid of this damn curse is right in front of us. Go and bring me the last Aztec gold coin. Amid the howling of ghosts and wolves, pirates of all shapes and sizes jumped directly from the Black Pearl. Their immortal existence made them act recklessly. For such a small island, they would not have been in the eyes of the Black Pearl crew at all. But who made them feel the breath of the last Aztec gold coin here? This is the original sin that destroyed this small island. The pirates rushed to the island with a roar. They couldn't wait to start killing and searching to get the last Aztec gold coin and be freed from the curse forever. A large number of pirates stepped over the waves and came to the island. Their roaring voices were not concealed at all. The Royal Navy, which had been vigilant, discovered their existence at the first time. It's just that it's not time yet, and the predetermined plan has not been realized. This group of high-quality Navy soldiers are all hiding in the dark, waiting for the prey to take the bait. Closer, closer. The pirates couldn't wait to start killing. They didn't realize that someone would set an ambush here, so when the pirates in the front fell into the trap dug by the Navy in advance, they didn't react at all. What happened? This caused the pirates who followed closely behind to jump into the trap one after another without breaking, like the greatest warriors. In the 3-meter deep pit, there were densely packed sharp wooden spikes. When the pioneering pirates fell into the trap, they were pierced by the wooden spikes like a candied horse. Because of their immortality, these pirates could not feel the pain of being injured at all, so they did not sound the alarm in the first time. The first step of the Royal Navy's operation was a great success. When the pirates in the rear realized what was happening, the Royal Navy had already emerged from the darkness. Swoosh, a firework like a signal flare exploded in the sky in the distance, and the smart pirates realized at the first time that this might be a trap. After the Royal Navy emerged from the darkness and threw out a series of unbreakable fishing nets from their hands and covered the trap, this was further demonstrated. There is an ambush. It's the British. The sharp-eyed pirate discovered the existence of the Navy at the first time, and then he immediately spread the information he had obtained loudly. With the route blocked, the pirates suddenly became polarized. Some pirates, relying on their immortality, were not afraid of the sudden ambush at all, which aroused greater anger in their hearts. So when some pirates screamed and wanted to rush over and fight with the Navy soldiers in close combat, a small number of pirates stopped cautiously. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of gunfire rang out like fried beans, and the pirates, who gathered tightly together, without exception, had blood blooming on their bodies to varying degrees. After a pause, the pirates who were suddenly attacked all laughed. They were laughing at the ignorance and incompetence of the Navy. The existence of their immortal bodies was not something the other side could imagine. However, the Royal Navy, which had long known that muskets were useless, how could it be possible to do such a useless work? They were just relaxing the pirates' vigilance. When the pirates jumped up, or stepped on their companions' heads, trying to jump over the trap and rush into the Navy formation to kill and kill. Shields raised. With a loud shout, the musketeers in front of the Navy retreated quickly, and a team of soldiers trotted up from the back. They thrust large shields as tall as a person into the ground and firmly protected them. A solid shield wall, like a tough great wall, was erected on the edge of the trap, causing the anxious pirates to hit the wall and fall into the trap. The pirates cursed loudly. This long outdated combat method became the best way to limit their attack. The Navy could not just passively defend. Before the pirates could come to their senses, cans of kerosene were thrown out from behind the shields, hitting the pirates or around them. Many pirates who had no sense of smell did not realize what this was in the dark. But when the torches were thrown out by the Navy again, and ignited the kerosene on the pirates finally showed a look of fear. It is true that they are all immortal, but if their bones are burnt to ashes, even if they are immortal, can they still live in the form of ashes? Think about it, this is impossible. Even when the flames burn their bodies, it is because of the existence of immortal bodies that these pirates can still jump around and think. At this point, they can't break through the shield wall at all, and now they are burning with flames, and there is the ocean behind them. If they don't realize what they should do, then they are really fools. Chapter 142, Overwhelming. The pirates of the Black Pearl came like a tide, and now they are leaving like a tide. The difference is that the pirates who are now fleeing in a panic have all turned into human torches, illuminating the beach like daylight. Only the smart people who are lagging behind have escaped this disaster. They gloated and laughed at the pirates who were on fire. Don't overestimate these pirates. All the beautiful adjectives are difficult to reflect on them. Betrayal is commonplace for them. It is normal to forget righteousness when seeing profit and stabbing the back. The burning pirates jumped into the sea like dumplings. Only the pirates who were unfortunately trapped found it difficult to get out of it. Seeing the pirates fleeing like a tide, the Navy on the shore did not pursue them, because on the sea, I don't know when there were 2 warships no less than the size of the Black Pearl, slowly approaching and surrounding the Black Pearl in a pincer attack. Boom. The roar of the cannons was the first to sound. The Dreadnought and the Interceptor faced the side of the Black Pearl and began to bombard it without mercy. Ah. Stop it, don't break my big baby. On the coast, Jack, who noticed this scene, jumped up with a heartbroken face. Seeing that the Black Pearl he had been thinking about was right in front of him, if it was sunk by artillery, he would have no place to cry. But the battle on the sea was not something he could affect by shouting a few words. The roar of the cannons continued, and the Black Pearl seemed to have no power to fight back. In fact, Barbossa did not expect this to happen at all. He wanted to get the last Aztec gold coin so much that he sent out most of the crew. So under the bombardment of the Dreadnought and the Interceptor, Barbossa could not organize people to fight back. Moreover, even if they were immortal, if they were hit by the shells, it would be enough to tear their flesh and blood bodies apart. Although this kind of damage could not completely kill these pirates, it could make them lose their fighting power. When the bombardment stopped for a period of time, Barbossa showed his head from the side of the ship and wanted to check the enemy situation. He was shocked to see that the enemy's ship had approached. This situation directly frightened the monkey named Jack on Barbossa's shoulder, who grabbed the rope and climbed up quickly. Barbossa felt that his face must be very ugly. Anyone could see that this was a premeditated battle. The other party had long anticipated their arrival. But how could this be possible? Barbossa must not believe that what he suspected in his heart was true, unless the other party understood the role of the Aztec gold coins very well, so that they could make such an arrangement. However, there was no chance to think about these things at this time. The enemy had already attacked. Barbossa directly drew out the rapier at his waist and cheered loudly for the remaining crew members on the ship. Take up your weapons. Hold our defense line. We are immortal. These damn navymen, they can't be our opponents at all. However, before Barbossa finished his impassioned speech, a fishing net with weighing stones tied to the four corners was thrown at him. Ouch. Barbossa, who was suddenly attacked, was caught in the net and was dragged to the ground in embarrassment. When Barbossa hurriedly pushed the fishing net away and escaped from the predicament, he was surrounded by Navy soldiers holding harpoons. This was a very fast blitzkrieg, so fast that Barbossa didn't have much chance to react. Barbossa took a breath of cold air, and he was puzzled in his heart. When did these British people become so powerful? Is this still the British Royal Navy he knows? If the British Navy were all such strong, the British would have dominated the world long ago. Although Barbossa didn't know when the British Navy's combat effectiveness became so strong, his current predicament was real. Just when Barbossa was angry and wanted to fight back with his immortality, he caught a glimpse of the miserable state of his crew. I don't know when this group of British Navy stopped using muskets and switched to using harpoons. With just one strike, they could pierce a bloody hole in the pirates. When the pirates were pierced through their limbs by several harpoons and nailed firmly to the deck, Barbossa wanted to swallow his saliva to calm himself down. Unfortunately, he had lost the ability to swallow saliva. Okay, I surrender. I need to be treated fairly. A good man does not suffer a loss in front of him. Barbossa threw down the rapier in his hand very singly. Although he was a legendary pirate, he was threatened by several long-handled harpoons at the same time, and he had no power to turn over. The few remaining pirates on the Black Pearl were quickly subdued, and the Navy soldiers immediately took control of the ship and began to defend it, which made the pirates who escaped from the coast directly homeless. And under their horrified gaze, the Navy controlled the Black Pearl and slowly began to move and sailed away from this sea area. What happened? The remaining pirates stepped on the mud and sand on the seabed, looking at each other, and watched their Black Pearl being driven away by others. For a moment, these pirates who lost their ships felt like abandoned babies, and felt the deep malice of the world towards them. They became a group of homeless people, because as the fastest ship in the Caribbean Sea, the Black Pearl disappeared in front of them in the blink of an eye. When the pirates wanted to target the Dauntless and the Interceptor again, they sadly discovered that, although they had immortal bodies, they could not climb onto the ship without the help of cables. That's right, long before that, the Dauntless and the Interceptor had already retracted the cables hanging around the hull to prevent pirates from climbing up through the cables. These helpless, seemingly abandoned pirates could only hide in the seabed in order to prevent the Navy from catching them. As time passed, until dawn, only after the two Navy warships left, did the surviving pirates dare to walk out from the bottom of the sea and gather together again. What should we do? A pirate asked the common question of everyone. Those damn Navy didn't care whether they were caught or not, and directly gave up on them, leaving them trapped on this small island. No, it's too early to say that they were trapped. If these pirates had great perseverance, they could avoid the ubiquitous undercurrents on the seabed and the attacks of large marine creatures. They would most likely walk from the bottom of the sea step by step to other places. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 Abduction Plan. It was another morning, and the increasingly prosperous royal port had already awakened before the sky was fully lighted. Workers and sailors who made a living by the docks hurried to and fro in the port of Royalport, running for their own livelihoods. When did that ship come? Someone with sharp eyes suddenly noticed the black ship docked on the sea. It was black in shape, and even the masts and sails were black, which was daunting. People are born with a fear of this deep color. The black ship that was driven back to Royalport was the Black Pearl that Jack had been thinking about. At this time on the Black Pearl, Jack did the same thing. He ran back and forth on the deck, touching here and there, and muttered in his mouth, accusing Norrington of breaking his big baby. That's it, Jack didn't finish yet. After reminiscing about the feeling of owning the Black Pearl, he ran to Xia Changqing's side, muttering how pitiful the broken Black Pearl was. Xia Changqing was annoyed by Jack, who was a chatterbox. Shut up, Jack. If you keep talking in my ear, don't blame me for hanging you on the mast. Under Xia Changqing's urgent rebuke, Jack covered his mouth exaggeratedly, with an expression like an abandoned young wife on his face. When you need him, call him Captain Jack. When you don't need him, hang him on the mast. Men are really pigs. Jack looked at Xia Changqing's face full of resentment. He looked at Xia Changqing with a cold expression, and he didn't doubt the truth of Xia Changqing's words. Enough. Jack, don't look at me with such disgusting eyes. Xia Changqing ignored Jack and called Wyatt over. Find the best craftsman in Royal Port. I want to see the Black Pearl repaired as soon as possible. No problem, sir. Wyatt agreed immediately. Now in Royal Port, it is not difficult to find some skilled craftsmen, especially working for Mr. Xia. But then Wyatt's face showed hesitation again. Just say it, if you have something to say. Xia Changqing glanced at the hesitation on Wyatt's face, who was about to leave. Yes, sir. Wyatt smiled. The pirates we just captured are clamoring to see you. What do you think we should do with them? Don't worry about those pirates. Lock them up for a while. After the curse is lifted, we will see whether to subdue them or execute them. Sir, are you kidding? Just as Xia Changqing finished speaking, Jack, who had been winking and leaning against Xia Changqing, suddenly shouted, "Those damned, inhumane pirates, only being hanged is their best fate. You must not be soft-hearted." Jack was naturally unwilling to let those pirates go, although those people were his original crew, but they betrayed him directly under the instigation of Barbossa. Even if Jack was not lucky enough, he would have died on that unknown island long ago. By the way, there is also Barbossa. That damned betrayer. Jack's face changed from gloomy to bright, and then he ran out quickly, intending to personally go to Barbossa and ridicule him. Xia Changqing looked at Jack's childish behavior speechlessly. He turned around and seriously instructed Wyatt to arrange people to repair the Black Pearl as soon as possible. After all, in Xia Changqing's plan to become the Pirate King, the Black Pearl, as the fastest ship in the entire Caribbean Sea, is an important part. No matter what you do, time is money, and he doesn't want to waste too much time on the road. After arranging these matters, Xia Changqing returned to his mansion. The process of ambushing and defeating Barbossa was easily completed with the careful preparations made in the early stage. So Xia Changqing did not leave Port Royal for too long, only 2 days, but Elizabeth, who had not seen Xia Changqing for 2 days, was full of little emotions. "I thought you went on an adventure secretly," Elizabeth complained dissatisfiedly. After arriving at Port Royal, this was the longest time Xia Changqing had been away. Because Xia Changqing had promised Elizabeth earlier that he would take her to adventure on the sea, Elizabeth had always remembered it in her heart. "Don't worry, Elizabeth, if I go to sea, I will definitely take you without anyone else. I just got a very majestic pirate ship these 2 days. You can go and see it. I promise, you will like that ship." "Pirate ship?" Elizabeth screamed excitedly, and she looked at Xia Changqing in disbelief. "Are you serious? Are we going to sea on a pirate ship?" Elizabeth has a great interest in pirates, which ordinary people are terrified of. "That's right, Elizabeth. Do you want to experience the feeling of being a pirate? Do you want to be the Pirate King of the Caribbean?" Xia Changqing looked at Elizabeth with a smile, and his tone was bewitching. "Pirate King? Can I?" Elizabeth's eyes were full of longing. Before she had seen the cruelty and viciousness of pirates, pirates were synonymous with freedom in Elizabeth's mind. Naturally, she had no resistance to becoming a pirate king. "Don't worry, Elizabeth. Don't you have me? As long as you are willing, I will definitely make you the Pirate King. This is my promise." Elizabeth was so happy by Xia Changqing's words that she wanted to tell everyone in Royal Port about this good news. But she also had doubts in her heart. The idea of becoming a pirate was too unorthodox. She also knew that not to mention other people, her father, Governor Swan, would not be easy to pass. When Elizabeth expressed her concerns, Xia Changqing directly gave her an idea not to tell Governor Swan, and they would just kill first and report later. "Elizabeth, there's no need to worry. Governor Swan knows you're going out with me, so he won't worry." Elizabeth thought about it and realized that this was the truth. She was not a girl who was willing to follow the rules. Adventure was what she wanted most in her heart. Xia Changqing didn't waste too much time talking. In a way, he kidnapped the little princess from Port Royal. Now everything is ready. The only thing missing is when the Black Pearl can set sail. Chapter 144, Fighting for a Position. Wyatt was indeed a very capable man. In less than a week, he brought good news to Xia Changqing. The legendary battleship in the Caribbean Sea, the Black Pearl, had been completely repaired. Well done, Mr. Wyatt. Now prepare food and water for our ship. The day of sailing is not far away. Xia Changqing waved his hand in high spirits. If he came to the world of the Caribbean Sea and could not sail on the sea, it would be a wasted trip. Even after leaving, Xia Changqing would regret it. Yes, sir. Wyatt's face was full of smiles. He looked at Xia Changqing expectantly. Sir, do you still lack a first mate on your ship? The smile on Xia Changqing's face froze, and he looked at Wyatt steadily. Under Xia Changqing's gaze, Wyatt, who was a little defeated, suddenly heard a faint voice. What a pity, Mr. Wyatt, I need you to stay in Port Royal and take charge of the Mayfair. Wyatt's smile quickly disappeared. He looked a little sad and looked at Xia Changqing sincerely. Sir, the Mayfair is already a mature organization. Even without my management, it can operate as usual. Besides, there is Colonel Narrington in Port Royal, so nothing will go wrong. But, Wyatt, in the entire Port Royal, you are the only person I can trust. Sir. As if thinking of something sad, Wyatt squeezed out a few tears from the corners of his eyes. I have never asked you for anything. Now I really beg you, just take me to sea with you. Xia Changqing couldn't help shuddering. He really didn't expect that Wyatt, a guy with thick eyebrows and big eyes, would be so disgusting and act like a spoiled child. Xia Changqing couldn't stand it immediately, and he quickly stopped Wyatt's disgusting behavior. Okay, I promise you. You are the first mate of the Black Pearl. So now, my first mate, the first thing you have to do is to arrange things in Port Royal and make sure that there will be no problems in your hometown after we leave. This is a very serious matter. Xia Changqing doesn't want his base to be stolen. After going out for a while, James Narrington now seems to be obedient to Xia Changqing, but the righteous naval captain has never given up the opportunity to get rid of Xia Changqing. Because Xia Changqing suppressed Port Royal, James could be honest. Once he and Wyatt left, Xia Changqing had no idea whether James would do something behind his back. No problem, sir. I will definitely arrange it properly. Wyatt promised Xia Changqing, as if he was issuing a military order. After Wyatt left excitedly, Elizabeth followed. Xia, I just saw Mr. Wyatt come to you. Has the Black Pearl been repaired? Can we go out to sea? Elizabeth said impatiently. She was attracted by this elegant pirate ship the first time she saw the Black Pearl. Although Elizabeth is just a little girl, she also has a heart that yearns for the sea. That's right, Elizabeth. Wait patiently for 2 days. Before going out to sea, we must first prepare food and water. Of course, we also need some crew members. Xia Changqing looked at Elizabeth with a doting smile. This is the feeling of nurturing. He watched Elizabeth grow from a little girl to a graceful lady. This kind of mental journey is too complicated. That's great. Do I need to prepare anything? Elizabeth's restless state is very much like a student who has just stepped out of the school gate and participated in her first job. Xia Changqing smiled and said comfortingly, you don't need to prepare anything. Just be ready to welcome a new life. Just when Elizabeth was excited, Jack found Xia Changqing angrily. What day is it today? Why do you all come to me one after another? Jack, tell me, what do you want to talk to me about? Indeed, after Wyatt came to report that the Black Pearl had been repaired, Xia Changqing had never felt at peace. Jack's face was full of anger, and his eyes, made of smoky macupe, stared at Xia Changqing indignantly. You liar. Jack's fingers unconsciously pinched into an orchid finger shape, and the resentment in his heart seemed to have turned into substance and surrounded him. This amazing momentum made Xia Changqing want to retreat 3 feet. Jack, even if you are a pirate, you should speak with conscience. How can I be a liar? Be careful or I will sue you for defamation. You still don't admit it? Jack pinched his throat and screamed, you promised me to return the Black Pearl to me, but now, you have taken it for yourself. So it was this matter. Xia Changqing smiled and looked at Jack quietly, pretending to be puzzled and asked, Jack, when did I lie to you? Yes, I promised that. As long as you guide the direction of navigation for me, I will let you see the Black Pearl again. Tell me, have you seen the Black Pearl now? Jack was stunned, and then he immediately shook his head frantically. No, that's not what you said at the beginning. You said you would return the Black Pearl to me. No, Mr. Jack, please recall it carefully. I have never said such a thing. You have to understand this truth. The Black Pearl is in my hands now. I can promise to let you return to the Black Pearl. For you, it is already a very lucky thing. Although the situation is not strong, Captain Jack Sparrow is not a person who surrenders easily. Okay, but I want to be the first mate of the Black Pearl. Jack loudly put forward his request. The first mate is his lowest requirement. He knows that the position of captain is definitely not his, but this position of first mate must not be given to others. Xia Changqing glanced at Jack and knew that this shameless pirate in front of him was the kind of person who could open a dying factory if he gave him a little color. I have already promised the position of first mate to Wyatt, so don't even think about it. I told you at the beginning, Jack, we have agreed that you will lead the route for me, so the position of navigator is the most suitable for you. Navigator? Jack shouted in disbelief. Just as he was about to raise an objection, he immediately noticed Xia Changqing's dangerous eyes. Jack also understood the principle that a good man will not suffer a loss in front of him. Okay, then I'll be the navigator. Chapter 145 Setting Sail. On a ship, the position of the navigator is the third most important position after the captain and the first mate. Because in this era, it is easy to get lost when sailing on the sea. Once lost in the vast ocean, the only way waiting for the crew of this ship is death. In this case, a navigator who can point out the direction of travel is very important. Jack was quite satisfied with being able to grab the position of the third person. He came angrily and left excitedly. When Jack made the request, Elizabeth, who had been listening on the side, became more and more bright in the eyes. After Jack left Xia Changqing's mansion, Elizabeth raised the corners of her mouth and looked at Xia Changqing with a slightly coquettish expression. What, Elizabeth, do you also want a position from me? Looking at Elizabeth's shining eyes, Xia Changqing immediately understood what she was thinking. As Elizabeth nodded like a chicken pecking at rice, Xia Changqing sat upright and looked at her seriously. So, Elizabeth, tell me, what kind of position can you be qualified for? Captain? First mate? Navigator? Or boatswain? Every time Xia Changqing said a position, Elizabeth would shake her head blankly. She was full of excitement just now, but Xia Changqing made her depressed with just a few words. Of course, Elizabeth was not the kind of little girl with poor psychological quality. After being slightly depressed for a moment, she raised her head again with full energy. You are right, I can't do anything now, but I won't give up. One day, I will become a qualified captain. Yes, Elizabeth, I hope you can keep this belief and believe that you can do it. What? Jack and others are experienced sailors. When you get on the ship, you can ask them for advice and learn. Cultivating Elizabeth to become a qualified pirate captain started from this adventure at sea. Time flies, and 2 days have passed in a flash. Under Wyatt's coordination, the cabin of the Black Pearl was filled with food and water for sea voyages. As the actual controller of the royal port, Xia Changqing was unwilling to compromise himself even when going out to sea. As a legendary pirate ship, the Black Pearl itself reached the standard of a first-class battleship. Her cabin was very large and could accommodate a large amount of cargo. Because as a pirate ship, the Black Pearl also had to have a large enough cabin to load cargo after robbing merchant ships at sea. But for Xia Changqing, although becoming the pirate king was his goal, it did not mean that his style of doing things had to be the same as that of ordinary pirates. That kind of behavior would only lower his own level for no reason. So Xia Changqing, who did not need to rob other merchant ships to survive, used the huge cabin of the Black Pearl to hold food and water. After all these things were arranged, Xia Changqing found Norrington again and selected 70 strong men from the Royal Navy as the crew members who followed him to sea this time. It was not to look down on the Mayfair members in the royal port. To be honest, those people were indeed not as good as the professionally trained Navy soldiers. Although in the original plot, these Navy soldiers were the ones who were fooled by Jack, making them look incompetent. But in the real world, pirates without organization and discipline are no match for these trained Navy soldiers. In addition to these crew members, Xia Changqing asked Wyatt to publicly recruit some cooks, boatmen and other people. After all the personnel to drive a ship were fully equipped, the day of sailing finally arrived. Xia Changqing did not hide his intention to sail out, and in fact, he could not hide it. Regarding Xia Changqing's departure, the senior staff of Royal Port were in a complicated mood, and all kinds of ideas came out. Of course, these secret tricks have never been taken seriously by Xia Changqing. No matter what those people thought in their hearts, on the day Xia Changqing left, powerful people of all sizes rushed to the dock to see Xia Changqing off. As the nominal highest officer of Royal Port, Governor Weatherby Swan stood at the forefront of the team as the leader of those rich and noble people. It is impossible for Governor Swan to say that he has no resentment towards Xia Changqing who suppressed him. However, Governor Swan, who is steady by nature, did not show anything on the surface. Well, to say that he is steady is to overestimate him. Governor Swan is essentially a coward, otherwise he would not have ignored Elizabeth and got close to Xia Changqing. Thinking of Elizabeth, Governor Swan felt that Xia Changqing's departure was a good thing. He saw that his daughter was getting more and more beautiful, but she was too close to Xia Changqing, which made Governor Swan very anxious. After all, in Governor Swan's mind, Colonel James Norrington was a good candidate for a son-in-law. He just took advantage of the time when Xia Changqing was away to match Elizabeth and James. Thinking of this, Governor Swan couldn't help but reveal a smile of expectation on his face. After the smile fell, Governor Swan glanced around, and he didn't see Elizabeth, which made Governor Swan feel a little strange. Given the closeness between Elizabeth and Xia Changqing, how could Elizabeth not show up when Xia Changqing was going to sea? Where is Elizabeth? Governor Swan asked the attendant beside him. Faced with the attendant shaking his head blankly, Governor Swan's heart suddenly sank. He couldn't help but tiptoe and look at the Black Pearl ship in the distance. Suddenly, Governor Swan's eyes fixed. He saw a girl in men's clothes on the deck at the stern. Who else could it be but Elizabeth? Governor Swan looked at this scene with bloodshot eyes. He kept cursing the damn Xia Changqing in his heart, who actually kidnapped his precious daughter without saying a word. Colonel Norrington, hurry, hurry. Elizabeth is on that ship. Hurry and get her back. Governor Swan squeezed to the side of James Norrington into steps and pointed at the Black Pearl in the distance with an anxious look. James was stunned and then immediately became ugly and his palms clenched unconsciously. However, facing the Black Pearl, which was already moving slowly, he had no other options. With an ugly smile on his face, James comforted himself and said, "It's okay. With Mr. Xia here, Elizabeth's safety should be guaranteed." Chapter 146. The Black Flag appears. Pa. The waves gently hit the hull, but it couldn't stop her from moving forward unwaveringly. The Black Pearl rode the wind and waves and slowly sailed away from the Royal Port. Everyone, target Death Island, full speed ahead. Jack Sparrow stood at the rudder with high spirits, steering with one hand and putting one hand on his waist, and issued orders loudly. Only at this time did Jack feel a little bit like a captain in his dream. He touched the rudder with fascination and was reluctant to let go for a long time. "Mr. Navigator? Mr. Navigator? Who is it? Who is disturbing the great Captain Jack Sparrow?" Jack looked angrily, wanting to see who was so bold. "Mr. Navigator, this is my seat." After Jack looked over, the old sailor from the Royal Navy bared his teeth at Jack and then mercilessly took back the rudder from Jack. The expression on Jack's face disappeared and he stared at the helmsman with thick eyeshadow. The old sailor just looked straight ahead, not paying any attention to Jack's gaze. "Jack, don't argue with him. The captain is watching you." Jibbs didn't know when he came to Jack's side and reminded him in a low voice. Jack, who heard this, turned his eyes and secretly looked in the direction of Xia Changqing. Just at this moment, Xia Changqing's eyes were also looking at Jack. Looking at Xia Changqing, who seemed to be smiling, a large shadow quickly emerged in Jack's heart. Go, go. Without Jibbs urging him, Jack grabbed him and quickly left the stern. Shaking his head with a smile, Xia Changqing retracted his gaze. He saw all of Jack's performance just now. For someone like Jack, it is not his character to be inferior to others, but now the captain of the Black Pearl is Xia Changqing, and even Jack can't make too much waves. After retracting his gaze, Xia Changqing turned his attention to Elizabeth. After the Black Pearl slowly left the royal port, the girl's mood has been low. Elizabeth, why are you unhappy? Are you reluctant to leave the royal port? Xia Changqing asked with some concern. Yeah. Elizabeth lay on the side of the ship and agreed sullenly. She turned her head to look at Xia Changqing. I thought I would be very happy, but after leaving my father, I was reluctant to leave him. Since I grew up, I have never left my father's side. Xia Changqing was silent when he heard this. He didn't know how to comfort Elizabeth. The two stood on the side of the ship, blowing the sea breeze. After a long time, Xia Changqing said, we went out this time to broaden our horizons. When you get tired of it, we will come back. And don't you want to be a captain? This trip is a good opportunity. You can ask Jack and others for advice. If you want Elizabeth to get rid of her depressed mood, there is no better way than to divert her attention. Sure enough, after listening to Xia Changqing's words, Elizabeth stood up from the side of the ship and was full of fighting spirit again. After seeing this scene, Xia Changqing smiled with relief, turned around and shouted loudly, Jack Sparrow. Here, Captain, I wonder if you have any instructions? After Xia Changqing shouted, Jack immediately came out from some corner. Mr. Sparrow, I have something to ask of you. Captain, if you have something to ask, please speak up. Don't be so polite. The flattering smile on Jack's face made Jibs unable to bear it. But Jack didn't care about these, and being thick-skinned was his way of survival. Okay, Jack. It's like this. I know you are an experienced captain, and I hope you can teach Elizabeth how to become a qualified captain in your spare time. Teach Elizabeth? This little girl who is still wet behind the ears. As soon as Xia Changqing finished speaking, Jack screamed unconsciously, and then he immediately realized that he had said the wrong thing, and quickly covered his mouth with his hands. Seeing Elizabeth's dangerous eyes, Jack smiled awkwardly. No problem, Captain, I promise to work hard. Xia Changqing nodded with satisfaction, and turned to look at Elizabeth. Elizabeth, learn with your heart. Although Jack is crazy, he is indeed very experienced. Crazy? Jack couldn't believe that he was such an image in Xia Changqing's mind. Well, he admitted that he was sometimes crazy. Crazy Jack left, and Jibs was floating in the wind, and complained in a low voice, the captain is really crazy. It is unfortunate to bring a woman on board. He actually wants a woman to be the captain. Xia Changqing shook his head and laughed. He didn't care about what Jibs, who was a little superstitious, said. With him here, even if something unfortunate happened, he could turn it into a blessing. The Black Pearl left the royal port, and, under the leadership of Jack, the navigator, headed towards the location of the Death Island, riding the wind and waves. Life at sea is boring. After all, the range of activities for the crew members is so small. The size of the ship limits the size of their range of activities. At the beginning, people may be excited about life at sea, but after a long time, most people can't stand this same life day after day. On the Black Pearl, the most idle and bored person is Xia Changqing. When it comes to managing the ship, Wyatt, the first mate, is conscientious and manages the entire ship in an orderly manner. Since Elizabeth went to learn about the knowledge on the ship with Jack, she has been deeply involved in it, and the time she spends with Xia Changqing has been greatly reduced. There are so many crew members on the ship, Xia Changqing can't even transform into a dragon and fly to the sky for a swim. Alas. Xia Changqing reproduced Elizabeth's state that day. He lay on the side of the ship and sighed, boring. It seems that he knew that Xia Changqing was bored and wanted to find something for him to do. Suddenly, the lookout's voice came from above his head. Captain, there is a ship ahead. There is a ship? Xia Changqing was shocked. He was worried about having nothing to do. This was like someone giving him a pillow. After stretching his body, Xia Changqing easily climbed up to the observation tower, snatched the telescope from the lookout, and looked forward. A ship soon came into Xia Changqing's sight. The black flag flying high on the mast shocked Xia Changqing. Chapter 147 Naval Battle. Black Flag. The flag representing the pirate ship, the Black Flag, that frightened the merchant ships in the Caribbean. Xia Changqing felt his arm holding the telescope tremble slightly, and he was so excited. This is really great. His boring life at sea finally had a chance to get some adjustment. He was originally worried about what to do if it was a merchant ship. Although there are no pure good people even on merchant ships in the Caribbean, they will sometimes transform into notorious pirate ships. After all, a large number of ships in the Caribbean have privateering licenses issued by various governments. However, compared to simple pirate ships, Xia Changqing believes that he can act on them with more peace of mind. Pass my order. Prepare for battle. Xia Changqing shouted excitedly, and the voice spread directly throughout the Black Pearl. After a brief moment of silence, the sailors acted quickly, as if from this moment on, the entire Black Pearl came alive. Quick, pull out the cannons. A gunner shouted, and the powerful cannons were pushed to the battle position by the gunners. They began to clean the barrels and load gunpowder. There were also sailors standing on the deck, preparing the hook. In the naval battle in the Caribbean, relying solely on artillery fire is not a way to win. No matter what kind of battle, it will eventually develop into a boarding battle. After receiving Xia Changqing's order, the helmsman also turned the rudder, adjusted the direction of the Black Pearl, and headed straight for the pirate ship. Xia Changqing stood on the observation deck, and could clearly see that the other pirate ship had also discovered the trace of the Black Pearl. After a brief adjustment, it actually came straight to them. It seems that the purpose of both parties is unspoken, and they all want to get a vote on each other. After all, meeting in this vast ocean is also a fate between them. Looking back, Xia Changqing looked at the busy, but not chaotic Navy sailors on the deck, and he was still very confident in his own combat effectiveness. But there is still one thing to pay attention to. Elizabeth, go back to your room. This is not a battle you can participate in. Xia Changqing looked at Elizabeth, who ran to the bow of the ship excitedly, and looked at her from a distance, and shouted to her in a serious tone. Fighting is not a dinner party, nor is it a joke. Even he could not guarantee that Elizabeth would always be in a safe position in a battle with so many people. Although the muskets of this era were backward, with Elizabeth's physique, if she was really hit by a stray bullet, she would be half dead if she didn't die. However, Elizabeth pursed her lips and looked up at Xia Changqing reluctantly. Her attitude was very obvious. Elizabeth, I'm not kidding you. Xia Changqing ignored Elizabeth's resistance and turned around and shouted, "What? Have someone send Elizabeth back to her room. Everyone else, prepare for battle." Under Xia Changqing's strong pressure, Elizabeth was sent back to her room very dissatisfied. At this time, the other pirate ship was close to 2,000 meters away from the Black Pearl, but the other party still had no intention of slowing down and rushed towards the Black Pearl regardless of anything. The Black Pearl, which had disappeared from the Caribbean Sea for many years, had long lost its former reputation. But now was the time to let the glory of the Black Pearl shine again in the Caribbean Sea. The distance between the two sides reached 1,000 meters, close enough to clearly see the configuration and preparations on both ships. At this moment, a flag suddenly waved on the bow of the other ship. There were naturally knowledgeable people on the Black Pearl. Jack squinted his eyes and took a closer look, then looked up and shouted to Xia Changqing, "Captain, the other side has discovered our identity. They want to live in peace with us. Don't do it casually." Heh. Xia Changqing smiled coldly. "They said they wouldn't do it, so they didn't do it. Who do they think we are? We are the British Royal Navy." Xia Changqing waved his hand and ordered directly, "What? Raise our British Navy flag." "Yes, Captain." Jack looked at Xia Changqing speechlessly. What his captain said was indeed right. If they were Navy, it would be natural for them to attack a pirate ship. It's just, the Black Pearl is a free pirate ship. Now she has to raise a flag belonging to the Navy, which is really unfair to her. Jack couldn't help but touch the side of the bow, thinking secretly in his heart. Unfortunately, he didn't have the final say on the Black Pearl now. Under Xia Changqing's order, a flag with the Navy's emblem quickly rose on the mast. The other side obviously discovered this, and the people on the ship soon panicked. But at this time, the distance between the two ships was less than 500 meters. This distance was just a blink of an eye for the two ships. Full left rudder, Xia Changqing ordered. He wanted to rely on the speed advantage of the Black Pearl to catch the other side off guard. The Black Pearl's forward hull suddenly began to rotate. The sudden turn made the entire hull tilt to the left, and the right side was lifted high. The crew on the Black Pearl couldn't stand steadily for a while and swayed from side to side. However, the sudden left turn achieved a perfect effect. The other pirate ship did not slow down because of the sudden left turn of the Black Pearl. When the Black Pearl turned the corner, the other side just came over. Ready, fire. The two ships that were originally sailing head-on now became parallel. Without Xia Changqing's order, the muzzles of the guns on the right side of the Black Pearl had been opened by the sailors. The black muzzles were directly aimed at the left side of the pirate ship. Following Xia Changqing's order to fire, the torches in the hands of the old sailors lit the fuse without hesitation. Fire! Amid the shouts of exhaustion, the cannons on the Black Pearl roared in unison. The artillery fire of the 24-pound gun seemed to come from the soul-catching messenger in hell. At this moment, Xia Changqing seemed to feel that time had slowed down. He clearly saw that one shell after another was whistling and hitting the pirate ship on the side. Boom boom boom. The sound of the shells hitting the hull, the sound of the wood breaking, the screams of the pirates, mixed together, as if forming a beautiful symphony. The hulls of both sides continued to move forward in parallel. After the Black Pearl fired a round of artillery, the sailors needed to clean the barrel and reload the shells. At this time, the opponent's counterattack also arrived. Chapter 148 Victory comes so easy. Boom boom boom. The cannon roared, and in the fiery fireworks, the solid shells came quickly, piercing the armor of the Black Pearl, causing casualties among the Navy sailors. It was obvious that the other pirate ship was not made of paper. They were able to launch a counterattack while being attacked, which obviously made Xia Changqing look up to them. In this period, even some powerful countries could not do anything to pirates, and there was a reason for this. This can be seen from the pirate ship that Xia Changqing was dealing with. It's just a pity that as a legendary warship, the Black Pearl's strength is not only reflected in its speed. In terms of the strength of its armor, the Black Pearl can also far surpass ordinary pirate ships. So the attack of the other pirate ship is just a drizzle for the Black Pearl, and it is harmless. Fire! Wyatt and Jack shouted at the same time. Amid their shouts, the Black Pearl launched a second round of artillery fire. On the pirate ship, blood and flesh flew everywhere, and screams continued to ring out. The fierce gunfire of the Black Pearl caused great damage to the enemy. However, Xia Changqing underestimated the resilience of the enemy. Even with such an attack, the pirates on the opposite ship still had no intention of surrendering. On the contrary, the other side actually turned left and wanted to approach them. This was intended to engage in the most intense and cruel boarding battle in naval battles. However, in terms of boarding battles, Xia Changqing did not think that the professionally trained Royal Navy on his ship would not be the opponent of the pirates on the opposite side. Turn right and bring the ship closer. Xia Changqing ordered loudly, everyone get ready, and kill them all. Kill them all. Influenced by Xia Changqing's shouting, the crew also shouted loudly, with high morale. With the two ships intentionally approaching, the two sides soon collided with each other. A series of hooks were thrown from their respective ships to the opposite side, and then firmly grasped on the side of the ship. The pirates are pirates. Encouraged by the captain of the pirate ship on the opposite side, all the pirates pretended to be crazy and followed the cable to kill the Black Pearl. Don't overestimate your own capabilities. Xia Changqing snorted, and he turned around and ordered, defense formation, free shooting. The reason why Navy soldiers are stronger than pirates is that they are organized and disciplined, and they know how to fight together. After Xia Changqing's order was issued, the crew members quickly stood together, raised their muskets horizontally, and started free shooting. Crackle. The sound of frying beans rang out one after another. Many pirates were hit before they even touched the edge of the Black Pearl and fell into the sea screaming. After the first row of shooting, these crew members quickly retreated. The crew members who had been prepared behind them replaced their positions, and the gunshots rang again. The time was so short that the pirates had no time to react. In an instant, the sea was like dumplings, and there were constant sounds of falling into the water. Under such intensive attacks, Xia Changqing was surprised that the pirates did not even have the intention of collapse. Their will to resist was so tenacious. However, under the continuous attack of the musket, the Black Pearl also gained a great advantage. At least the pirates' attacks were not so frequent. Although some pirates had slipped through the net and jumped onto the Black Pearl, they were no longer a big deal. Under the attack of the Navy crew, these pirates were soon killed on the spot. Attack. The voice that spread throughout the Black Pearl sounded, and Wyatt was the first to blow the horn of attack. The former boatswain of the Princess and the current first mate of the Black Pearl took the lead and rushed towards the pirate ship. Wyatt held a rope and jumped to the opposite pirate ship like a swing. Before he landed, 3 pirates attacked him at the same time. "Get out of the way," Wyatt shouted and kicked a pirate away with one foot. At the same time, he swung the long knife in his hand backhand and instantly cut the throat of another pirate. At this time, the attack of the third pirate had already come to him. Wyatt was helpless. After all, he was just a mortal. No matter how strong his martial arts skills were, he could only try to minimize the damage he suffered in this situation. A long and narrow wound appeared on Wyatt's back, which aroused Wyatt's ferocity. He was in his prime at this time. How could he allow some small pirates to bully him? Wyatt, who had successfully landed on the pirate ship, did not have time to stand firm. He rolled forward and dodged a slash after backhanding the opponent. Such battles took place in every corner of the pirate ship. On the observation deck of the Black Pearl, Xia Changqing, who was looking at the entire battlefield, could find that the Navy had gradually gained the upper hand. After more and more Navy members jumped onto the pirate ship, they gathered together to form small groups and help each other. In this case, how could pirates who could only fight alone be their opponents? As time went by, the pirates were defeated and gradually retreated together, fled into the cabin, and firmly controlled the entrance to the cabin. At this point, the whole battle was nearing its end. Except for those who resisted stubbornly, many pirates chose to throw away their weapons and kneel down to surrender. Xia Changqing slid down the lookout, grabbed the rope, and came to the pirate ship. "Captain, the remaining pirates have occupied the cabin, and the brothers can't attack for a while." Wyatt gritted his teeth. Blood was still oozing from his back, and he said to Xia Changqing breathlessly. Xia Changqing patted Wyatt on the shoulder. "Wyatt, you've done a good job. Go and treat the wound on your back. Leave this to me." "Captain, I'm fine. I can still fight." Wyatt straightened his body, but this action directly involved the wound on his back, causing Wyatt to gasp again. "Don't be so stubborn. Do you think I can't handle this little thing?" Xia Changqing frowned and stared at Wyatt. Wyatt, who was frightened by Xia Changqing's eyes, couldn't help but whisper his agreement. After sending Wyatt away, Xia Changqing walked to the tightly closed entrance of the cabin and suddenly turned to look at Jack, who had been working without any effort. "Jack, the other party has been resisting stubbornly. What do you think we should do now?" Jack, who had been trying his best to hide his figure, did not expect Xia Changqing to suddenly call his name. Chapter 149 Cold and Hard. Jack hid behind a Navy sailor. Only half of his body was exposed, and he carefully observed the situation on the scene. For this kind of battle, Jack's principle was to be lazy if he could, and he was stupid to fight like Wyatt. But he never expected that the captain would suddenly call his name when the battle was about to end, and only a few pirates were still resisting. Jack felt like he had eaten shit, and his heart was extremely uncomfortable. After hesitating for a while, he couldn't stand Xia Changqing's aggressive gaze, so he walked out reluctantly. Xia Changqing had always seen Jack's sneaky and slippery behavior, and now he specifically called Jack's name to give him a warning. "Captain, these pirates dared to resist, which is really a heinous crime and unforgivable." After Jack stood up, he immediately chattered and accused the pirates of wrongdoings, but he didn't say a word to the point. "Mr. Jack Sparrow," Xia Changqing interrupted him directly, "I need you to come up with an idea for me, not to listen to you chattering like a woman here." It's the captain." I shut up. Jack exaggeratedly covered his mouth with his hand, pretending to stop talking. Seeing this scene, Xia Changqing's eyes twitched violently. Facing such a rogue Jack, he really couldn't do anything to him. After all, Xia Changqing still needed Jack to be his navigator, to see the wonders of the world. Now is not a good time to kill the donkey. "But Jack, you will have a hard time in the future." Xia Changqing secretly rubbed his teeth. He swore that he would definitely tie Jack to the mast and let him suffer from the wind and sun. Turning around, Xia Changqing no longer paid attention to Jack, who deliberately shirked his responsibility. Now, except for some pirates who were still resisting under the cabin, the whole battle was over. Xia Changqing didn't have time to waste with these people here. I'll give you 10 seconds. Open the cabin and come out to surrender. I can consider letting you live. Otherwise, I don't mind using cannons to sink this pirate ship. Xia Changqing's face was slightly gloomy and his tone was emotionless. 10, 9. Then, Xia Changqing started counting. Since he had already put pressure on the other party, he would never let these pirates have any fluke mentality. 5, 3, 1. Xia Changqing was slightly silent. It was really embarrassing. The pirates hiding under the cabin actually had no intention of coming out to surrender. They were determined to hide to the end. In this case, don't blame him for being cruel. Xia Changqing turned around and gave an order calmly. Let this pirate ship be buried in the sea forever. The naval crew members were all slightly stunned. They didn't understand why they spent so much effort to shoot down this pirate ship. Now they didn't even take the spoils and directly sank the pirate ship. Although there were still some pirates occupying the cabin and resisting stubbornly, it was not difficult to deal with them. Captain? A Navy officer couldn't help but ask his own question. HMM. Xia Changqing looked at the Navy sailor who dared to speak out. Captain, the spoils are all in the cabin below. If we sink this pirate ship directly, we will get nothing. Even under the pressure from Xia Changqing, the sailor still expressed his doubts. Xia Changqing didn't mean to be angry. He certainly knew that it was not only necessary to let the horse run, but also to let the horse eat grass. Why do these people want to become the British Royal Navy? In addition to the improvement of their status, the more important thing is to have a good life. And if you want to have a good life, then pounds are indispensable. Now because of Xia Changqing's order, their efforts have been completely wasted, not to mention that there are people who have been injured and sacrificed. If Xia Changqing can't solve this problem, even if the sailors now carry out his orders, they will inevitably leave a grudge in their hearts. In this regard, Jack is a perfect negative example. Why did the original crew of the Black Pearl support Barbossa and betray Jack? It was because Barbossa could make their lives better. Follow my orders. As for the spoils, you can tell from the pirates' appearance that they are not rich at all. When we get to the Island of Death, the treasure there is enough for everyone to become middle class. Xia Changqing took out the treasure of the Island of Death as a blank check to appease the sailors, which calmed the sailors down immediately, and they began to execute Xia Changqing's orders. All the crew members of the Black Pearl began to evacuate in an orderly manner, and the pirates who had surrendered at the first time were also brought back to the Black Pearl. Xia Changqing kept his word. Since he said that he could consider giving the surrendered pirates a way out, he would naturally not break his promise. After everyone evacuated from the pirate ship, the entrance to the cabin slowly opened, and a group of more than 10 pirates filed out. They looked at each other, and Xia Changqing's threats to them were still vivid in their minds. At first, they did not believe that Xia Changqing would really order their ship to be sunk, so these people dared to hold on and not come out. But now that they found that the other party had really evacuated, they began to panic again. Before the pirates could react, the sound of cannons suddenly rang out. The death note from hell made the souls of these die-hard pirates tremble. However, at this point, they could no longer surrender. Under the intensive artillery fire, the mast of the pirate ship broke, and the deck cracked. After a few rounds of attacks, the entire pirate ship was flooded from the bottom, and sank to the bottom of the sea. After sinking the pirate ship, the Black Pearl turned around, and continued to move towards the Island of Death. At the place where the pirate ship sank, several helpless figures rose, and fell on the sea, hoping to attract the attention of the Black Pearl and survive. But Xia Changqing had no sympathy for these pirates who had done so many bad things, and committed so many heinous crimes. He was sure that the ordinary people who died at the hands of these pirates were definitely not just one or two. Someone come here. Captain? Do some ideological work on these pirates. Let them mend their ways as soon as possible. Tell them that there is no future in simply being pirates. Yes, Captain. Watching the sailors taking the surrendered pirates away, Xia Changqing looked at the flaming sea with his eyes flickering, thinking in his heart the possibility of integrating all the pirate forces in the world. Chapter 150 Hector Barbossa. The Black Pearl sailed through the waves, set out from Port Royal, and finally arrived at the treasure hiding place, the Island of Death. Well, the above are all Xia Changqing's inner monologues, but there is one thing that is not wrong. They did come to the Island of Death. This treasure hiding place where the Black Pearl hides the treasure is located in a remote area. From the outside, no one would think that there is a secret hidden inside. If Jack had not led the team in person, Xia Changqing and others would not have found this secret place at all. Well done, Jack. Xia Changqing patted Jack on the shoulder and praised. Although Jack is now a middle-aged man in his 40s, in front of Xia Changqing, he seems to be a young man who has just reached adulthood. There is no way Xia Changqing brought too much pressure to Jack. Jack, you actually brought outsiders to rob my treasure, you despicable villain. A voice suddenly sounded, angrily scolding Jack. This made Jack's expression stunned. He turned his head to look at Barbossa, who was being guarded by the sailors, and suddenly Jack laughed. Mr. Barbossa, you are a shameful traitor, and you seem to have made a mistake. This is my treasure, and you are just a shameless villain who stole my treasure. Jack twisted his body in the posture of a winner, and paced back and forth in front of Barbossa triumphantly. Pa. After brewing for a moment, Barbossa shot a mouthful of thick phlegm at Jack, which made Jack jump up in disgust. Jack, look at you now. Do you still look like a free pirate? You are now like a puppy wagging its tail to beg for mercy from its owner, which is really pathetic. Barbossa's taunting skills must have been maximum doubt. Originally, succumbing to Xia Changqing, who looked young, had already made Jack feel humiliated, and now Barbossa mercilessly tore his wounds. I'm going to kill you, Barbossa. Jack screamed, and drew out the rapier at his waist like lightning, and stabbed it into Barbossa's chest. Haha, you idiot, you can't kill me by doing this. I don't even feel any pain. Jack and Barbossa are old enemies. Each of them wants the other to die, but they also cherish each other. The phrase love-hate relationship is very suitable for these two people. Enough. You two, be quiet for a while. Xia Changqing stood up and stopped the meaningless quarrel between the two. He first ordered Jack, Mr. Sparrow, help us prepare the boat. We are going to land on the Island of Death. After sending away Jack, who was still upset, Xia Changqing turned to look at Barbossa. Mr. Barbossa, let's make a deal. What deal? Barbossa looked at Xia Changqing with vigilance. We need talents like you in Royal Port. Promise me to work for me, and I will help you get rid of the curse of the Aztec gold coin. Xia Changqing said as he took out the last Aztec gold coin from his arms. My gold coin? Is there any curse on this gold coin? Elizabeth didn't react when she first heard Xia Changqing and Barbossa's conversation, but when Xia Changqing took out the Aztec gold coin, she realized it. Isn't this the gold coin that Xia Changqing took from her? The gold coin originally belonged to Will, but because it was engraved with a skull symbolizing pirates, Elizabeth hid it herself to protect Will. Don't worry, Elizabeth. Xia Changqing gave Elizabeth a reassuring look. Although this gold coin is surrounded by the Aztec curse, it only works on the first person who takes it. Otherwise, I wouldn't let it be worn on you all the time. After Xia Changqing's explanation, Elizabeth finally felt relieved, and she couldn't help but pat her small chest. However, this beautiful scene was not noticed by Barbossa at all. After listening to Xia Changqing's words, he fell into a weird state. It was an excitement that no words could describe. Barbossa pushed hard towards Elizabeth's position, almost letting the two sailors who were holding him slip away. Beautiful lady, can I know your last name? Is it Turner? Is your last name Turner? Elizabeth, who was confused by Barbossa's question, said in confusion. Turner? No, my name is Elizabeth Swan. Elizabeth Swan. Barbossa showed a strange smile at the corner of his mouth, and his mind seemed to have some problems. It's not Turner. It's not Turner. After mumbling several times, Barbossa's head suddenly raised up, staring at Xia Changqing. I promise you, I will work for you, and you have to help me lift the curse. Xia Changqing finally smiled. Deal, Mr. Barbossa. It was exciting to be able to take a famous pirate king as his subordinate. Of course, Xia Changqing did not forget what kind of person Barbossa was. Compared with Jack, Barbossa can be truly called a pirate. He is good at playing tricks, killing and betraying. For Barbossa, it is as simple as eating and drinking. Such a person will never be loyal to others. But Xia Changqing doesn't care, because in the face of powerful strength, all conspiracies are futile. When his strength has surpassed the scope of mortals, he is no longer afraid that Barbossa will betray him. Xia Changqing will not be like the tragic goddess of the sea. As a god, he can be sealed by mortals, which is really embarrassing for the gods. So even if Barbossa dares to betray Xia Changqing, and even secretly do things behind his back, Xia Changqing can give him one chance, two chances, but will never give him a third chance. The reason why he wants to subdue Barbossa is that he is indeed more like a pirate than Jack, which can be seen from the development trajectory of the two people in the future. Although Barbossa lost a leg in the battle with Blackbird, he later owned more than a dozen pirate ships and lived a king-like life. As for Jack, he was so poor that he even pawned his compass for a bottle of rum. So in order to make Elizabeth's path to becoming the pirate king smoother, it was a correct choice to subdue Barbossa. As for whether to abandon him in the future, it still depends on Barbossa's own performance. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.